Chapter 21. Star, Home, 6, you are listening at novelfull.audio. So, do you want me to make you a weapon? The tattooed man asked. That is right, Sun said with a nod. Sitting beside a small table, the man laughed lightly when he heard Sun's request, a wry smirk on his face. Eddie, you're interesting, the man said sarcastically. Why would you make such a request to me even after seeing me? The Celestial, a good season to hunt, says the blind man is correct, nodding vigorously. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, suggests that perhaps these high-quality weapons were not made by the blind man. The Celestial, world, encircling serpent urges her to keep quiet because she is being so noisy. Forging items out of iron was undoubtedly not easy work. Sitting in front of a hot furnace was extremely tiring, and the smith would always have to be careful to not burn themselves when handling molten iron directly from a furnace. On top of that, hammering iron required a great deal of strength and stamina, as well as considerable skill. Was a blind man capable of doing all that work? No, it was impossible. Just as Pablesag had said, he would be unable to use the necessary tools. If you're here to mock me, you've already done that enough, so go home. We closed down a long time ago. Let's go, Wilson, the man said as he stood up. The Seeing That Eye dog quickly approached, offering his own leash to the man. Seeing That Eye dogs were most commonly golden retrievers, but Wilson was a Doberman. Regardless, Sun crossed his arms and snorted, saying, "You say your shop is closed, but I can see your furnace is still lit." He did not fail to notice the man flinching. As the man had been rude, Sun no longer felt the need to be polite. He continued casually, "Besides, the callus on your right hand looks new. Why don't you hide those kinds of things first before claiming your forge is closed?" The man swiftly shot a look of annoyance toward Sunday. Although he was wearing thick sunglasses, Sun could still feel the man's glare. The man angrily snapped, "What do you know? It looks as if you're having financial difficulties, but you can't starve your buddy who serves as your eyes," Sun said, cutting him off. The man was at a loss for words. If Sun had just said, "financial difficulties," he would have yelled at Sun to get out. However, when Sun mentioned his Seeing That Eye dog, he couldn't say anything. He too knew Wilson was thinner than most dogs. 10 million won for each request you complete, and I'll give you an additional 50 million won if you finish all my requests. I don't care about the quality, but I'll give you a handsome bonus if the quality is good, Sun offered. The man was speechless for a moment upon hearing Sun's unexpected offer. However, he stood by his pride, asking skeptically, "How can I trust you?" Still, Sun knew the man was almost convinced, and soon dealt him the final blow. "Give me your bank account number." The man continued to look suspicious of Sun until Lee Sun has deposited 10 million won into your W bank account. The man's smartphone read the message to him, filling him with mixed emotions. He was unsure whether he was supposed to be happy or not. "This is a deposit, not advance payment. I'm giving this to you as a down payment for my requests, but you can tell me if this isn't enough," Sun said bluntly. If somebody kept refusing his order, all he had to do was pay more. That was the beauty of capitalism. Although Sun was out of a job, he had earned a lot during his professional gamer years, so he had never lacked money. That was why his parents had been unable to do anything to stop him from drinking. He would remain unaffected even if his parents stopped giving him an allowance. Besides, his inventory was full of byproducts he had gotten from his first dungeon tutorial. Those byproducts alone would cost more than 100 million won. The word "flex" existed for just such a moment. In the end. "Me more," the man said, so quietly that Sun could not hear him. "What?" Sun replied. "Give me an extra 5 million. I need to pay overdue rent," the man repeated, only slightly more audibly than before. Chang Sun chuckled as he pulled up his smartphone again. Ding! A pleasant notification tone soon filled the room. Asterisk asterisk asterisk, Chang Sun, what you're asking me to make is, the man exclaimed. However, Chang Sun interrupted, saying, CEO. What? The man asked in surprise. Call me CEO, not Chang Sunday. I'm your only client, and you're only going to fulfill my requests with my money. I spent too much to be called a customer, so I'm Gab and you're Yule, Chang Sun replied. So CEO wants a 5-meter long whip, a long spear that can be assembled, 5 axes and hatchets, 4 of every type of sword, and a shield. Did I get everything right? The man, Choi Bu Yong, asked in bafflement, emphasizing CEO. Although Bu Yong addressed Chang Sun with the requisite term, his tone was far from polite. He had taken Chang Sun's requests because he needed to solve his financial difficulties, but it turned out that each and every one was ridiculous. After taking out hundreds of bloody mamba and black mamba carcasses, Chang Sun had asked Bu Yong to use their tendons to make him a very long whip. He had added an extra request to cover the whip with mamba scales, as he wanted it to be unbreakable. However, that was not the end of his first request. He planned to carry it around every day, so he needed a function to transform the whip into a bracelet. Chang Sun's request for a long spear that can be assembled stumped Bu Yong completely, making him wonder what that could mean. It turned out that Chang Sun wanted 2 short spears of different sizes with joints on the ends of their handles, so he could connect the 2 and use them as one long spear later. Once again, however, that was not the end of the request. Chang Sun also needed the spear to have a switch that would let him use different blades depending on how much mana he infused into it. In other words, it was no ordinary spear that Chang Sun wanted. He was looking for a spear that could turn into a variety of weapons, a hoko yari, a dagger. Axe, a trident, a glaive, and so on. When Bu Yong had shouted angrily about how he was supposed to make all of those weapons, Chang Sun had calmly replied that it was more than possible, and even offered to give him blueprints. At that point, Bu Yong had every reason to believe Chang Sun was making fun of his blindness. In addition to the aforementioned requests, Chang Sun had asked Bu Yong to manufacture a long rapier from a wyvern spine, a shield made from 20 layers of a black bear's tanned belly hide, and several dozen more axes and hatchets. The more Bu Yong heard Chang Sun speak, the crazier he believed his client to be. Each of Chang Sun's request was for a strange, brilliant weapon. No, I'm planning to request a bow, arrows, and armor later, Chang Sun said casually, explaining his future plans. Bu Yong could not take it anymore. He gritted his teeth and replied, I can't do it. Why? Chang Sun asked, tilting his head. You're making too many difficult requests. You seem to be a player, but I've never made this kind of stuff, and I don't even have materials. Bu Yong protested. Li Chang Sun has deposited 100 million won into your W bank account. This is for material costs, but tell me if you need more. Don't say you can't make it, since you'll have to pay 300 million won as a penalty, Chang Sun said nonchalantly. Fuck. Bu Yong cursed, looking as if he would cry. When he first met Chang Sun, he had looked like the most pitiful figure in the world, but now he was just dispirited and depressed. Chang Sun had done that in 30 minutes. Crazy bastard, Bu Yong grumbled. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, nods in agreement. Of course, Chang Sun simply shrugged indifferently, remarking, I hear that a lot. In the end, Bu Yong gave up and sighed for a long time. He had no other excuse to use, considering how much Chang Sun was offering. However, he shook his head in disbelief as he asked, why do you so firmly believe I can make all these? Aren't we strangers to each other? It was understandable that Bu Yong felt that way, but Chang Sun just smiled silently as he thought strangers. Well, he's right. He's also a little-known blacksmith who has a critical disadvantage. In truth, Chang Sun knew Bu Yong was not the Yezi Thanatos had talked about, because he had heard from Bu Yong's neighbors that Choi Li Forge's owner was an old man. Chang Sun assumed the Yezi Thanatos had mentioned was the father or the teacher of the blind man sitting in front of him. It looked as if a mysterious accident had either killed or injured Yezi, so the new Yezi, Bu Yong, had inherited the forge. Judging from the various circumstances involved, the accident must have been the cause of Bu Yong's blindness. Maybe they ran into Capricorn again, the star who almost killed Yezi, Chang Sun assumed. That meant all the sacred weapons in the forge had not been made by Bu Yong, just as Pabelsag said. Although the furnace was still active and he had calluses on his hands, even Chang Sun could not be certain about his ability. Despite all that, Chang Sun still wanted Bu Yong to take his requests, even if that meant having to force Bu Yong to fulfill them by shoving money at him. Did he have any reason for that? No, it was just his intuition, the intuition that had enabled Divine Twilight to become a fiend. His divine class had been revoked, but his intuition was something that could not be taken away, and it had been telling him ever since he met Bu Yong that everything would be fine. However, that was not the only reason. Chang Sun actually liked every part of the forge, from the smell of divine fire in the furnace to Bu Yong's determination. Does the manufacturer need to question the client's decisions? You make products and I pay for them. I would call that a pretty good deal, Chang Sun said as he tapped on the table. Even though Bu Yong was still unhappy, he soon began to feel a fire rising inside him. After all, Chang Sun was technically correct, a professional blacksmith did not need a reason to make a product. Okay, I'll take the requests, but it'll be too difficult to manufacture all of them. First of all, your requests are too hard. It'll take forever to find a way to create them. Secondly, your deadline is too short. Oh, yeah, and I haven't pounded iron for a long time, so I should get the hang of smithing again. Above all, though, Bu Yong sighed, pausing for a moment as he tried to find the right words. I have one critical problem. What is it? Chang Sun asked. I don't have my hammer, Bu Yong replied. Your hammer? Chang Sun repeated, sounding perplexed. Thinking Chang Sun had assumed his answer to be an excuse, Bu Yong quickly added, I don't want to lose a sugar, no, a tycoon like you, so while I could lie to you, I can't lie to myself like this and lose my pride. I may look like this right now, but I'm still a blacksmith. Explain it in detail, Chang Sun replied. He knew that Bu Yong had been about to call him sugar daddy, but he did not bother to point that out. Do you see my family's furnace? Bu Yong asked as he stroked Wilson's head. Chang Sun nodded. Bu Yong's furnace, the divine fire furnace, was the reason he had found the forge. I can't tell you why in detail, but my family's furnace is more special than the furnaces used in other forges, so it requires a special hammer when we handle metals from it, Bu Yong began to explain. However, he suddenly wondered why he was explaining his story in detail to Chang. Sunday. After going through unfortunate incidents that most ordinary people would never experience twice in their lives, Bu Yong had only been left with fury. Thus, he would usually have stood by his pride and told Chang Sun to not mind his business. Strangely, however, he did not feel the urge to do so with Chang Sunday. Instead, he felt that he wanted to ask for Chang Sun's help and rely on him instead. Even he did not know why he wanted to do so, though. Was it because of Chang Sun's strange tendency to randomly throw money away? No, it was for a different reason. Did it get stolen? Chang Sun asked. That's right, Bu Yong said, nodding with great difficulty. Chang Sun could see Bu Yong's knitted eyebrows over his sunglasses as he asked, who stole it? He was my senior brother and my father's former disciple. When my father passed away, he stole my father's hammer and ran away. Bu Yong replied. Chang Sun nodded with a heavy heart. Such things happened in Arcadia too. After the passing of a great teacher, the disciples often fought over their teacher's legacy. I guess he had poor judgment. Chang Sun thought as he looked at the bronze sword that had been used as a fire poker for the divine fire furnace. The hammer that had been used by O Yezi for generations would undoubtedly be powerful, but it would not be more powerful than that sword. The problem is that I won't be able to properly use our family's furnace without the hammer. Although I've been trying to create something of similar quality, I keep failing. Bu Yong trailed off. However, Chang Sun inferred the hidden meaning behind Bu Yong's silence. He asked, which clan persuaded your senior brother? The Hyoff clan. The Hyoff clan. Chang Sun repeated, tilting his head in confusion as he had never heard of them. Bu Yong was very surprised to see Chang Sun's reaction. He replied, you don't know. They're one of the 10 clans. I'll get it for you, Chang Sun said, seemingly not caring about the identity of the Hyoff clan. The Hyoff clan was one of the most powerful clans in Korea, so if an ordinary person had said that, Bu Yong would just have thought they were just bluffing. However, he was inexplicably confident that Chang Sun would be able to pull it off. He did not have a logical reason, he just felt incredibly certain. People did say words had power, and it seemed as if Chang Sun's words actually had power. Yes, this is it. He somehow always manages to persuade me. Bu Yong thought, feeling like a believer who had met his savior. It's still danger, he timidly began. It doesn't matter, Chang Sun said, interrupting him. He said firmly, I just have to erase all the evidence so no one finds out. 1. When Koreans sign a contract, the more powerful party is called Gab, and vice versa. This idiom is also used commonly to imply, I'm more powerful than you. Chapter 22. Star, Home, 7, you are listening at Novel Full.audio. Come in. So Yudhatha allowed Cha Yi-toon and Jin Suk-tae to enter her home after introducing herself as Chang Sun's mother. She's beautiful. Yi-toon thought in silent admiration. That was Yi-daun's first impression of Yudhatha, owing to the older woman's elegant beauty. In truth, she had heard that Chang Sun was more famous for his looks than his talent in his years as a professional gamer. It was said that he had inherited his looks from his mother, who had once been an actress. During her investigation of Chang Sun's family, Yi-toon had seen many photos of Yudhatha, but now she only felt that they had not done the woman justice. However, one thing continued to bother Yi-toon. Whenever she revealed her identity as a council agent, people usually became incredibly shocked, wondering if they had done something wrong. In contrast, Yudhatha looked calm. Despite the woman's air of composure, however, Yi-toon knew Yudhatha only looked calm after seeing her faintly trembling fingers. Regardless, Yudhatha spoke as if she had expected Yi-toon and Suk-tae's visit. Did somebody else from the council come here? Yi-toon thought, feeling that something was wrong. When she entered Chang Sun's home, she discovered the reason for that uneasy feeling. She could not spare a moment to admire the beautiful open view of the Hangang River from the living room. You guys are such slowpokes. I would expect nothing less from the council's agents. This is why civil servants are always criticized. Haha. Still, you're earlier than I thought. Long time no see, Agent Yi-toon. Yi-toon knew the two people sitting on the living room sofa. As a council agent, she was often forced to cross paths with them. She clenched her teeth as she thought, what the? When did they? They were executives from the top 5 clans in Korea. Seo Jong-gwon, also known as Smilodon, the leader of the White Tiger Clan's Attack Team 2. Woo Young-gun, also known as Black Shamshir, the personnel director of the Sword of Osung clan. Yi-daun's expression turned grim, as she had not expected to run into the two. Although she had known that secrets pertaining to Chang Sun would be leaked to major clans, she had not expected them to find out in less than a day after the dungeon closure took place. I was too complacent. Yi Dun thought, admitting her mistake. Seeing as even the council had classified information about Chang Sun as top secret, the major clans would have thought no less of him. In fact, they had even more reasons to react quickly, as they were private companies. What should we do, Yi Dun? Suk Te silently screamed in Yi Un's direction, feeling completely baffled. Seeing how things had turned out, Yi Dun felt that she had to take the bull by the horns. There was one silver lining, at least, as Chang Sun was not home, the clan representatives had not met him, which meant she still had a chance. I didn't think you two would get here before me, Yi Dun said calmly. I thought someone might snatch him away if I didn't come first. You know, I think clans are crazy nowadays when I look at rookies signing bonuses. On top of that, a team leader and a director from a major clan are both here to recruit this rookie. How is this even possible? Zhong Quan from the White Tiger clan answered first, sounding annoyed. Osung has been keeping an eye on the Jamsil Gate incident. Well, I could carry him on my shoulders if he is indeed a super rookie, Yang Gun from the Sword of Osung clan answered next, sounding more polite. Perhaps because they belonged to the two major clans that had the most intense rivalry in Korea, Zhong Guan and Yang Gun were completely different, from attitude and behavior right down to tone of voice. Zhong Guan appeared wild and unrestrained, like a lion set loose in the street. His large mane of hair and robust physique gave him a threatening aura. The White Tiger clan was known to have the strongest attack teams in Korea, and the clan's attack team 1 was under the clan leader's direct supervision, thus, it was no exaggeration to say that Zhong Guan, the attack team 2 leader, was the pride of the White Tiger clan. Yang Gun, in contrast to Zhong Guan, carried himself like an elegant gentleman. The Sword of Osung clan had started as a subsidiary of the Osung Group, which had led the Korean economy for a long time, and they had successfully become a major clan in a mere 5 years. As the personnel director of such a clan, Yang Gun was a very powerful man. In fact, the surname Wu was the surname of the Osung Group's president. In short, Zhong Guan and Yang Gun were not the sort who would normally go door to recruit rookies. Why would such people show up when it had been less than a day since the incident? It could mean only one thing. Both clans are too eager to recruit Chang Sunday. He's a super rookie, but is he worth all this? Yi Dun thought, her gaze turning sharp. Chang Sun must have some other secrets that we haven't noticed. Yi Dun did not know what those secrets were, however, she instinctively felt that whatever they were, they would make Chang Sun's value inestimable. The White Tiger clan and the Sword of Osung clan clearly intended to try to recruit Chang Sun no matter what. Apart from the practical benefits, it had become a matter of the two clans' pride. Nevertheless, Chang Sun was one person, which meant one clan would be unable to have him. What would happen afterward? They'll interfere to make sure the other clan can't have Chang Sun either. Yi Dun thought. She knew that the pompous Zhong Guan and the sophisticated Yang Gun both became the same sort of monster within a dungeon. If they failed to recruit Chang Sun, they would turn into monsters again. Fortunately, Yi Dun was a Class 3 agent, which meant her rank was on par with the other two. As she was just as talented a player as they were, she had no reason to feel inferior to them. Thus, Yi Dun, Zhong Guan, and Yang Gun entered a fierce staring contest. It is not much, but help yourselves, Yu Ha said, sounding tired as she set a plate of fruits down in front of the representatives. All 4 of you said you were here to recruit my Chang Sun, yes. As you may already know, the White Tiger clan is, Zhong Guan quickly began first. The Sword of Osung is more than willing to provide systematic education for Mr. Chang Sun, so he can become the best player in Korea. Yang Gun interrupted. The council. Yi Dun tried her best to say something good about the council. I understand what the 3 organizations are offering, but it is my youngest son's decision, not mine. So, I do not think I should be the one to hear about it. However, I would like to ask about something else regarding my son, even though I may not be a good enough mother, Yudatha said. She spoke so calmly and elegantly that everyone in the living room was able to hear her small, quiet voice. More surprising was the fact that she had interrupted 3 of the best professional players in Korea and managed to gain control of the conversation. You mentioned that my son was in the Jamsil dungeon over the past 15 days. Can I hear more about that? Yudatha cautiously asked. At that moment, Yi-dun realized that Yudatha and the rest of Chang-sun's family had previously had no idea where Chang-sun had been. It seemed the representatives had made a big mistake. Before leaving the Choi Li Forge, Chang-sun asked for a full account of what had happened from Bu Yong. There's only one reason why the Hyoff clan recruited senior brother, no, that bastard Jin Dae Hwan, Choi Bu Yong explained. What's that? Chang-sun replied, crossing his arms. They're trying to open a tomb, Bu Yong said, crumpling the paper cup in his hand. A tomb. Chang-sun repeated, biting the end of his paper cup. I don't know what tomb it is, but everyone knows that the Hyoff clan has been desperately trying to clear a certain tomb dungeon for a long time, Bu Yong replied. Trying to hold in his fury as much as possible, he continued, Dae Hwan was hired to open the final room inside the tomb. From what I've heard, it seems the room is sealed with a lock. I think it requires a hidden piece, but it looks as if the clan couldn't find it. That's why they scouted him. Chang-sun finally understood the situation. Because of the sheer number of mechanisms inside tomb dungeons, they were the trickiest ones to clear. Such mechanisms were installed to stop tomb raiders, as a tomb was intended to make sure the deceased could rest in peace. If one of the 10 clans was trying to complete a dungeon, it had to be very large. Thus, an ordinary key would be insufficient to open up the final room of such a dungeon. That had to be why they were trying to create a special key by recruiting a specialist. What dungeon is it? Such a dungeon must have fine burial goods in it. Chang-sun thought as he told Bu Yong to just wait for him to return. After that, Chang-sun headed to the dungeon Bu Yong had told him about. The celestial, Twilight, piercing owl, likes your righteousness, nodding in satisfaction. A bonus reward has been granted. Acquired the skill Unbending Spirit. Unbending Spirit, the celestial, Twilight, piercing owl, has given this gift to you, one who can no longer tolerate injustice and seeks to rectify it. It specializes in protecting you from mental debuffs. One with an unbending spirit will never yield under any circumstances. Type. Blessing. Protection. Effect. Immunity to mental debuffs. Maintain an iron will. Chang-sun unexpectedly received a gift from Minerva. He thought with a shrug, she must have misunderstood. Minerva had been acting friendly ever since Chang-sun had saved people from Mephistopheles, considering him to be a person who hated evil and championed good. On top of that, Chang-sun was about to help Bu Yong with problems, which was likely why she had given him a bonus reward. Chang-sun had no reason to clear up the misunderstanding, so he simply opted to let her keep believing that. Besides, the unbending spirit blessing she had given him was not bad. It was actually quite powerful. Chang-sun's only weakness at the moment was that he was vulnerable to curses that could affect his mind. Although his willpower was so strong that he had even acquired his own divine class once, he had lost his powers, which meant he would be weak if he came across a powerful figure. However, unbending spirit would help to resolve most of his concerns. Unless he went up against an apostle, nobody would be able to break through unbending spirit. Still, it would have been better if she gave me insightful eye, or goddess sword. Chang-sun thought, clicking his tongue in disappointment. Those were the authorities that had enabled Minerva to become a warring deity. Well, the first time's always the hardest. It gets easier the second time, so I just have to proceed step by step. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, is happy because she feels as if she is about to see an interesting fight. The Celestial World Encircling Serpent is looking forward to seeing how creatively you are going to handle this new battle. With Pabelsag and J. Rumungandr showing their support, Chang Sun arrived at Bongwasan Mountain, located in Yungnong.gu. The mountain was very small, making it more like a hill. The citizens who lived nearby usually used it as a walking path, but Chang Sun could not see any people, perhaps because it was late in the evening. It's 8:40 p.m. I'm late. Chang Sun thought bitterly. He had initially planned to head home as early as possible, but it seemed that would no longer be an option. After leaving a message to avoid making his mother worry, Chang Sun shoved his phone into his back pocket. First, I have to hide my identity. Chang Sun thought as he pulled out a unique mask from his inventory. Although the wooden Haho mask was nearly pitch black, it had a faint brown hue. The mask had been randomly hanging on the Choi Li Forge's wall, and he had simply taken it. Smiling Haho mask, a Haho mask carved from rosewood, which has become very sturdy through special processing. The mask is smiling, but it somehow looks sad. Type: mask. Defensive equipment. Defense. 50-70 effect. Prevent recognition. Clear vision. Its defense was quite low, considering that an Oyezi had made it, but its abilities were quite good. Prevent recognition, blurred other people's senses, which would give Chang Sun an advantage in ambushing them. Meanwhile, clear vision would allow him to see in the dark. Those abilities alone would be very useful in the upcoming battles. Click equip the smiling Haho mask. After covering his face with a mask that bore a sad smile and drawing Tiamat Snaggletooth, with one hand, Chang Sun began to move. Pa! Chang Sun climbed the mountain as quickly as lightning. It was not difficult to locate the dungeon, as there was only one crowded area on the mountain. No one other than the Highoff clan would be on the mountain so late at night. Who's there? A Highoff clan player yelled. Just like the Highoff clan's players, Chang Sun did not bother to hide. Rather than risking getting caught while trying to sneak around with great difficulty, it would be easier to finish his opponents off on the spot. Equip the ice kite feather daggers. As he ran, Chang Sun took out 4 feathers, holding them between his fingers. At first glance, they just looked like ordinary feathers, however, they were full of ice toxin. The feathers had been reinforced with bone fragments to make them sturdier, so Chang Sun could use them directly in combat. The skill Blood Toxin has been activated. The daggers have been smeared with ice toxin. The ice toxin in the ice kite feather daggers has been strengthened. That was not all, however. When Chang Sun smeared the feathers with his blood, they stiffened as if they had been frozen. I didn't know I was going to use these in combat so soon. Swoosh! Chang Sun threw one of the feathers in his left hand. Stab! Arg! The moment a player noticed Chang Sun, he was hit in the forehead by one of the feathers and fell backward, letting out a scream. Chai Yun, it's an ambush. Enemy! Get the intruder. Where are you? Show yourself. After moving their unconscious colleague to a safe place, the Highoff clan's players ran in Chang Sun's direction. Exactly as they demanded, Chang Sun appeared from the shadows. Stab, stab, stab. Chang Sun threw the feathers through the air, accurately aiming for the players' throats and the centers of their foreheads. Arg! What is this? Ice, this isn't melting. What the? The players were completely baffled by the message poisoned with ice toxin that repeatedly popped up before their eyes. They desperately tried to detoxify themselves by drinking antidotes, but the only message they received was, the antidote is ineffective. They were forced to suffer horribly, as Chang.Sun's attacks caused their bodies and mana flow to freeze on the spot. Chang.Sun broke through the crowd of players and swiftly reached the dungeon's entrance. "Stop him!" one of the players desperately yelled. The Hyoff clan had never expected someone to barge into a dungeon that was under their management, so they had not assigned many players near the entrance. Boom! Rumble! In the end, they were forced to allow Chang.Sun to enter, as their pathetic defenses were instantly overcome. 1. This is an actual mountain in Korea. 2. These are masks used in a traditional Korean ritual dance, originating from the Haho folk village. Chapter 23. Star, Home, 8, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Before Chang.Sun forced his way into the Bongwasan mountain, he had done some digging about the Hyoff clan and reached a conclusion. They're a bunch of trash. Chang.Sun thought, describing the clan in one sentence. He had just searched for information about them on the internet, but it was easy to see how infamous the Hyoff clan was. Reporters raised questions several times a year about how the Hyoff clan's players were involved in all kinds of violent crimes. Several of them had gone missing while trying to investigate the Hyoff clan. Visiting illegal entertainment venues, drug and human trafficking, kidnapping, contract killings. Several players from the Hyoff clan had actually been arrested for such crimes. They were also often hired as muscle to fight in dungeon-related conflicts. Despite all that, the clan was not classified as a criminal organization. The clan members were not only good at evading the law, but also at presenting a clean public image. The Hyoff clan often hosted charity events and conducted fundraising events. As such, players naturally tried to avoid getting involved with them. In that case, it'll be fine if I take them all out. Chang.Sun thought as he slashed through the knee of a player leaping at him. Chang.Sun's actions could also be considered crimes, but he had spent hundreds of years in a lawless world. There was no way he would care about the laws on Earth. He only maintained his own sense of justice. Underneath the Haho mask, his eyes shone brightly. ****, the Celestial, a good season to hunt, greatly enjoys your bravery. The Celestial World Encircling Serpent watches the current situation with great interest, surprised by your recklessness. Boom! Boom! Rumble! Arg! A player groaned. This is unbelievable. Another player frantically yelled as he crawled across the floor. If there was one mistake the Hyoff clan had made, it was that they had not focused on defending the exterior of the dungeon. However, that was understandable. Korea was one of the safest countries in the world. Clans had long since been industrialized, and people considered dungeons and gates to be their property. That also applied to the Bongwasan gate, so the Hyoff clan did not need to worry much even if they put minimal security around the gate. Who would have thought someone would dare to trespass on their property? Even the most audacious demon would never do so. Chang.Sun's plan had been based on that belief. Most players would have gone home at night, leaving only minimal security. The guards would also just be killing time, creating a perfect opportunity for him to ambush them. That was why the Hyoff clan was helpless against his attack. You have entered the dungeon, Bestla's tomb. Chang.Sun entered the dungeon, breathing in its stuffy, musty air. He found himself inside a stone chamber with no light coming in from outside. The only thing he could see was a large open space with a uniform brick floor that extended into a long, narrow hallway. There were torches mounted on the walls at regular intervals, but their light was so dim that they left most of the room in shadow. However, Chang.Sun had no trouble examining the tomb in detail. You are now able to see using the ability of the smiling Haho mask. He lent me this for a reason. Chang.Sun thought as he looked up, smiling in satisfaction. Thankfully, no one had decided to pursue him. They were no doubt trying to purge the ice toxin that was eating their bodies away. However, Chang.Sun was certain that no one would survive. It isn't just ordinary ice toxin, because my blood toxin ability made it much stronger. It was possible that some would be lucky enough to survive, but they would never be able to use their magic circuits again. Some would likely believe Chang's son had been too cruel, however, he cared little for that. These were the people who had blinded Choi Bu-yong, after all. It was only natural that if people earned a grudge from someone, it would come back to bite them. Chang's son planned to enter the final room while the Hyoff clan's guards were left in chaos. Bu-yong said they just brought a furnace and set up a workshop in front of the boss monster's room to create keys constantly. Chang's son thought as he recalled the conversation. It was common to install an independent workshop inside a dungeon if it was too difficult to finish after a few days. Such workshops would be primarily used to repair the player's gear and manufacture consumable supplies. With that, they would be able to create new items whenever they needed to, which would free players from the trouble of requesting supplies from outside. That kind of workshop was referred to as a portable workshop. One such workshop had been installed in Bestla's tomb, and Bu-yong's former senior brother, Jin Dae-hwan, worked as its chief craftsman. Thus, Chang's son planned to head directly toward it. Although he had subdued all the players outside, the clan members were no fools, and they would soon find out what had happened. His plan was to retrieve the hammer and escape before reinforcements from the Hyoff clan arrived. I want to take the burial goods inside the boss monster's room, but I guess that'll be difficult. Chang's son thought, clicking his tongue. From what he had heard, the Hyoff clan had already wasted 2 years in front of the boss monster's room. The room would not open up just because he had arrived. Regardless, he still intended to try opening it if he had spare time. There would be no better way to infuriate the enemy than taking away the most important reward from the dungeon they had finished with so much difficulty. Commencing the dungeon quest. Quest theme: Tomb raiding. Defeat the guardians who are protecting Bestla's tomb, and escape after stealing the treasure from the final room where the tomb's owner rests in peace. The tomb is divided into 3 sectors. Many mechanisms are installed in each sector to protect the owner's peace against tomb raiders, so be wary. To complete the quest, every participant has been granted access to the Celestial, a good season to hunt looks forward to your performance. Chang's son prepared to spring forward, but suddenly came to a halt. The Celestial, a good season to hunt asks what is wrong, tilting her head in confusion. Chang's son's gaze fell on a small door, not the hallway. It was located in the most obscure corner of the stone chamber, so he would have missed it if he had not observed closely. He called out toward the door, "Why don't you come out?" However, no one answered. "Aren't you going to come out?" Chang's son repeated. The Celestial, a good season to hunt asks why you are doing that even though no one is there. I have no other choice. If you're not going to come out, I'll just have to give my recording rights to the next administrator I meet, Chang's son said before turning away indifferently. The tightly closed door suddenly opened with a creaking sound. My. You are one impatient player, aren't you? You should try relaxing a little, you know, Harold the administrator, the rabbit man in a fancy tuxedo, said as he appeared from the other side. The Celestial, a good season to hunt exclaims in surprise when she sees that guy appear. Adjusting his monocle, Harold stared at empty air as if he were looking at somebody absent. He said, My. This is unbelievable. It seems everybody else already knew I was here. The Celestial, a good season to hunt asks angrily what Harold is talking about. It is true, Harold said with a gentle smile. The Celestial, a good season to hunt looks at other Celestials' channels. The Celestial, world, encircling serpent shakes his head in apparent disbelief that such an idiotic Celestial exists. The Celestial, abyss, chasing great devil, stares at the administrator, Harold. The Celestial, Twilight, piercing owl, bitterly smiles and comforts a good season to hunt, saying that it is not impossible to make such a mistake. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, gapes, saying this cannot be possible. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, compliments the administrator, Harold, for being able to hide well enough to fool a Celestial. I have not tried to hide particularly well, Harold answered politely. Quit dilly-dallying, Chung, Sun interrupted, stopping the comedic banter between Harold and Pablesag. He looked directly at Harold and asked, "You've been following me to right, am I right?" Sun's question made Harold's red eyes widen over his monocle. He asked, "Are you also aware of the tutorial is already over?" Sun said with a shrug. "It did seem as if you had more knowledge than an ordinary novice." "No, more than most rankers." "I will have to write that in the two," Harold said, confirming Sun's speculation. He had briefly thought about denying it, but based on Sun's level of knowledge, he thought it would be useless to hide such a thing from Sunday. That, put simply, was a written evaluation made by the about any subject Celestials paid a lot of attention to. It was a document that comprehensively explained the subject's most notable characteristics, personality, and talents, as well as speculation about their future and which Celestials would be a good match for them. It was usually written right after a tutorial, for subjects that had so much potential that going through one tutorial was insufficient to fully understand them. Administrators were usually responsible for writing thus, they normally had to do the legwork of observing a subject after the tutorial. On top of that, Sun was the most famous rookie in heaven at present. There were many Celestials looking forward to which meant Harold had to record everything. He was already busy managing several dungeons, but they had begun pressuring him to create a good. Thus, Harold had started to shadow Sun immediately after hearing that the rookie had entered a dungeon, but had gotten caught almost immediately. What should I do? He doesn't look like a person who'll just let this go. Harold thought, adjusting his monocle. He had not expected Sun to be well aware of his value and how important the was. If Sun prevented Harold from writing a proper or gave the recording rights to other administrators, Harold would have gone on a wild goose, no, a wild rabbit chase. He had worked hard in the tutorial and already written half of so he would be incredibly depressed if all his efforts went to waste. In the end, he had to bite the bullet and agree to Sun's offer. "You can keep the recording rights," Sun suddenly offered. Harold raised an eyebrow in response, wondering, this must not be it, right? "But I want to ask you a favor in return," Sun continued. There we go, Harold thought as he nodded to indicate he was open to granting a favor. I should just give him something with no strings attached. Besides, he could write most gifts off as a business expense. "What favor do you want to ask me?" Harold casually asked. "I'll ask you something later," Sun replied nonchalantly. Harold frowned quietly, getting a bad feeling from the situation. "I won't ask you anything too difficult, and I'll tell you before I get out of this dungeon," Sun slyly added. Although Harold very much wanted to know what was going on inside Sun's head, he could not nitpick, as he had far too much to lose if he did so. He just hoped that Sun was planning to ask a not so unusual favor. Phew. I have no other choice, so fine. However, just as you said, please tell me about your favor as soon as possible before you get out of the dungeon. I also want you to understand that I cannot grant you a favor that is out of my authority, Harold said, massaging his temples. You don't have to worry about that. So, I guess we have a deal, Sun said. As soon as Sun finished. Clink. Harold heard the sound of invisible chains being wrapped around his heart, no, a part of his soul. The player, Sun and the administrator, Harold, have signed a mana pledge. He even knows about the mana pledge. Harold thought in surprise. He was so dumbfounded that he no longer felt curious anymore. Instead, he was simply dispirited, as Sun had skillfully managed to use the system of vows often used by high-level beings, including administrators. A vow made through a mana pledge was effectively unbreakable. If one party in the contract broke their vow, their mana blessing would be removed immediately, making them completely unable to use magic. At this point, it would be more appropriate to call Chang Sun a veteran, not a novice. The celestial world encircling serpent is happy to see a snake who acts more slyly than him. Pa. However, Chang Sun had already begun moving, seemingly indifferent to Harold's question. *******, a report written by Harold, Class 4 Officer of Management Team 71. Player Lee Chang Sun is a very unique individual. Those unfamiliar with Chang Sun would never guess that he was a novice just from looking at how he fights. His fighting skill made many Celestials watch him with great interest, including a good season to hunt. Additionally, he is also showing his exceptional fighting skill in the current dungeon. Harold was very busy because he had many things to do, including writing the and going after Chang. Sunday. He had no time to focus on one agenda. What's up with his speed? He thought, grabbing his fluffy ears. If things had gone according to plan, he would have been able to relax and watch Chang Sun trying out various methods to escape the dungeon's traps. However, Chang Sun was finishing the sectors too quickly, he was practically running forward without pause. I cannot even begin to fathom his potential, after seeing him pass through the first and second sectors in less than an hour. It was as if he memorized all the locations and the order of the hidden mechanisms. When a giant iron ball drops, he destroys it with one strike. He does not even look as he deflects arrows from a trap. Aside from his combat ability, he is also great at controlling his magic. As far as I remember, Dungeon KR.921 has not been cleared for 4 years, but I feel that this player will be able to clear it. No, I know this player will. My intuition, which I have developed over my long years as an administrator, tells me so. As he has been leveling up at an indescribably fast rate, I think he is worth paying close attention to, in order to see how strong he will get. He has everything: exceptional talents, keen senses, unique characteristics. I assume the competition among Celestials to make him their priest, no, their apostle, will only become fiercer. Some may even consider replacing their current apostles. Perhaps great stars such as the Zodiacs or 3 enclosures and 20.8 mansions will pay attention. This exceptional player Lee Chang Sun reminds me of someone in the past. Harold had been writing busily with his pen, but he suddenly stopped, wondering whether or not to write the thought that had just crossed his mind. However, he soon came to a decision. Although some would no doubt frown after looking at he felt that he did not need to change what he had decided to write. No, I dare say that he is more talented than that someone. Divine Twilight. The star who shone brilliantly as he mocked countless Celestials, before eventually fading away. 1. Illegal entertainment is a common Korean euphemism to refer to brothels. Visiting one alone is already considered a massive scandal, enough to prevent celebrities from appearing on TV for years if they get caught. 2. Bestla is a J.ton, mythical beings otherwise known as frost giants, from Norse mythology. She is most commonly known as the mother of Odin and his 2 brothers, Vili and Ve. 3. The Raw was. This is a pun that comes from the Korean idiom "hara," which means, a dog chasing a chicken looks up at the roof, because the chicken has flown up to the roof. It means the person's effort has gone to waste. Since Harold is a rabbit-headed man, the author used rabbit instead of dog. Chapter 24. Star, Home, 9, you are listening at novelfull.audio. I believe the current key is, also a failure, a man timidly reported to his superior. Ah, fuck. What the hell is wrong with you people? Why can't you do your jobs properly? The superior yelled furiously. Thud. When the superior slammed his desk angrily, the subordinate who had reported to him began tiptoeing around him, hiding his neck like a turtle. Considering how much his superior liked drinking, the subordinate would normally offer up a bottle of wine he had saved for just such a moment. However, in the current situation, his superior would likely just smash him over the head with the wine bottle, shouting, "Are you kidding me? Such was the extent of his anger. Thus, the subordinate had to save his breath and remain as quiet as a mouse. If this continues, I'm going to receive a reprimand again. Lee Jae-sung, the section chief of the Hyoff clan's attack department and the other man's superior, pounded his chest several times furiously. His anger was understandable, as it had already been a year since he had taken charge of Bestla's tomb. He had talked a big game, saying he was different from his predecessors who had failed to accomplish anything. Despite that, he had also failed to show any results. In that case, he would have nothing to say in protest if he were taken as a sacrifice, branded and incompetent like his predecessors. The deadline given to him by the Hyoff clan's hire.ups was less than a month away. As he had been working for the Hyoff clan for a long time, he knew that the hire.ups would do more than just reprimand him. Thus, Jae-sung only became more nervous as time passed. I have no other choice. Bring that bastard Jin Dae-hwan here right now. Jae-sung yelled, ordering his subordinate to drag the cause of the whole mess over. He thought to himself that he had to do something about Dae-hwan. Worried about getting caught in the crossfire, the subordinate ran out of the room without questioning Jae-sung's order. Shortly after, he came back, dragging a blood-covered man in with one hand. Don't kill me. Please don't kill me. The man, Dae-hwan, earnestly begged for his life, crying and sniveling. The 40-year-old man was once the previous O Yezi's disciple, and the one who had stolen O Yezi's hammer. Ignoring his desperation, the subordinate brought Dae-hwan in front of Jae-sung. I heard you failed this time too, am I right? Jae-sung asked, crossing his arms. Section Chief. Please don't kill me. If you give me additional blood, I'll somehow. Dae-hwan quickly pleaded. Haven't I already given you everything you needed until now? When you asked for more manpower, I hired more people for you. When you asked for sacrifices, I supplied them without question. I even got you some celestial fire because you said something about needing special fire. Despite all that, you failed again and again, Jae-sung snapped, scowling at Dae-hwan. Dae-hwan could no longer say anything, so he merely kissed the ground and trembled, unable to meet Jae-sung's gaze. So tell me, do I have a reason to spare you when my life is also on the line? Jae-sung asked, gritting his teeth. It was because the celestial fire you gave me was from a low-quality furnace, not from the divine fire furnace. Dae-hwan exclaimed, pathetically making excuses. Is it my fault then? Jae-sung retorted with a smirk. Gasp. I just needed more time and blood. One more chance. Please give me one more chance. Then I'll definitely create a successful key, by any means necessary. Dae-hwan begged and begged in front of Jae-sung, who looked as if he would blow Dae-hwan's head apart on the spot. For a long time, Jae-sung stared silently at Dae-hwan, who just repeated that he could make the key like a parrot. Dae-hwan's pathetic begging only worsened Jae-sung's anger. He shut his eyes tightly as he thought, I never should have trusted this was. At first, he had been incredibly satisfied with Dae-hwan's extraordinary smithing skill. Jae-sung had felt that Dae-hwan was the last key to open the treasure chest the Hyoff clan had been unable to open for a long time despite their best efforts, the final room of Bestla's tomb. The final room, where the tomb's owner and many burial goods were, was known to contain a secret, invaluable treasure. As a low-ranking member of the clan, Jae-sung did not know what kind of treasure it was. However, one thing was certain. If he successfully opened the final room, he would be promoted instantly, as the clan leader had an interest in the dungeon. That was why he had boasted so loudly to the others. And yet, that very same boasting had turned into a noose around Jae-sung's neck. Do you only need blood? Jae-sung asked after sighing for a long time. The problem was that he had no other choice, even if he wanted to use a different method. Because he lacked time, his only choice was to support De Juan until the end. De Juan must have read the air, as he slammed his head against the floor and exclaimed, "Yes, yes. I've undergone several rounds of trial and error, but I did nearly manage to reproduce the shape of the key. In fact, I even unlocked 2 locks out of 3. The reason why I failed on the third one was that I ran out of blood sooner than I thought, and lost the power source, so we only have to fuel it." When Song heard De Juan's explanation, it almost sounded as if everything would be alright. However, he soon felt his anger rising again, because that was how he had fallen for De Juan's excuses every time. However, he calmed himself down with great difficulty, trying to convince himself to give De Juan one last chance. Besides, De Juan's last chance was also his own last chance, so he could only give De Juan everything he wanted. "Fine. I'll trust you for now," Song said, clicking his tongue. Thank you." De Juan exclaimed, sniffling. "Still. Keep in mind that if you also fail this time, I'll never go down alone. I won't only kill you. I'll also find every member of your family and shred them to pieces," Song said, smiling ominously. For a moment, De Juan's face turned pale, but he quickly slammed his head against the floor with such force that Song briefly wondered whether his skull had cracked. De Juan cried joyfully, Of course. No questions about it. By the way, why aren't the packages here yet?" Song asked his subordinate with a frown, suddenly realizing that the ingredients needed to supply blood had not arrived yet. "I will return after looking into it," the subordinate replied. He bowed deeply, and was just about to leave the room when ding! The ranking system has been updated with additional information. Dungeon ranking, 1st place. Zhongyu Jin, 150,000 points, 2nd place. Go Sung, 145,495 points, 3rd place. Li Song, 109,500 points, 50.7th place. Li Chung, Sun, New. What is this? Song wondered, frowning at the message that appeared before him. As he approached the last sector, Chung Sun sensed that something was off. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, thinks the air is too foul now. The Celestial, Twilight, Piercing Owl, warns you that she can detect evil all throughout the vicinity. Blood, Chung Sun thought as he smelled the stench of blood. However, the smell was of human blood, not monster blood. It was incredibly strong, as if dozens of people had died at once. Something is going on. Chung Sun thought. His intuition told him that was about to see the most insidious side of the Hyoff clan, which was known to be connected with the criminal underworld, and especially the black market. Moving forward stealthily, he hid in one of the room's innermost corners, focusing on his sense of hearing. Come on. Why aren't you moving? They're real slowpokes. Section chief will be pissed again. Should I blow some people's heads off? That might make them move quicker. Quit it. He said we need every man right now, so if we did that, he would blow our heads off, saying we could meet the quota that way. Fuck. This is so frustrating, a man cursed loudly, his voice echoing through the room. Every word they spoke was horrible, but they did not care. It seemed that they had not even considered the possibility that there would be an intruder in the dungeon other than them. Squinting, Chung Sun observed the situation. 4 players were corralling 15 civilians into a corner. Most of the civilians appeared to be homeless, among them, others were wearing hospital clothes, as if they had been kidnapped from hospitals. The whole situation looked suspicious even at first glance. The civilians wept and begged the players for mercy, but the players simply beat them every time they made noise. Some of the civilians' arms had been cut off, and the wounds bled profusely. The celestial, Twilight, piercing owl, expresses her anger at witnessing the horrible sight before her. The celestial, Twilight, piercing owl, implores you to bring justice. In contrast to her usual calm behavior, Minerva, who sought absolute good, was absolutely furious. Weren't they making a key for the boss monster's room? Are they offering sacrifices or something? Chang, Sun wondered, sensing a hint of familiarity in what was going on. The fact that humans were the most common and effective sacrifices available was true both on Arcadia and Earth. Just as Minerva did, the deities who sought absolute good abhorred the idea, but humans were simply seen as a good energy source for ordinary celestials. The celestial, abyss, chasing great devil, awaits your response. Mephistopheles, who was still waiting for Chang.Sun's answer, was a typical example of just such a deity. There are 4 of them. Chang.Sun thought, counting the number of enemies present. After deciding to attack all of them at once, he drew a diagram of how to ambush them in his mind. He planned to temporarily spare one person, because he needed to find out how many more people remained in the dungeon. Chang.Sun held the ice kite feather daggers between his fingers, cutting the ends of his fingertips to coat them with blood. The skill blood toxin has been activated. The daggers have been smeared with ice toxin. As ice toxin had proven to be very useful, Chang.Sun covered the daggers with as much ice toxin as possible. After checking that the feathers were solid enough, he sprang forth and swiftly sent them flying. Pa! Who? Arg! The man closest to Chang.Sun sensed something was wrong and turned around. However, one of Chang.Sun's feathers struck him in the forehead at that instant. Crack! Crash! The man's head was instantly covered with ice that spread swiftly across his body. He fell backward, his frozen body shattering into pieces. Ambush, one of the players yelled. Belatedly noticing Chang.Sun, the players drew their swords, but Chang.Sun sliced through one of their throats with Tiamat Snaggletooth, before they could react. Slash! The shocked player's head flew through the air. Equipped the Flame Goat's rib spear. Without looking back, one of the other players tried to run away, but Chang.Sun threw a bone spear at his back. Swoosh! Stab! The bone spear pierced through the player's armor instantly, going through his entire body and protruding from his chest. It stopped his body from hitting the floor, leaving the corpse propped up at a strange angle. Get away from me, the only surviving player cried fearfully. The 4 players had become one in an instant. Trying to defeat Chang.Sun somehow, the last player swung his knife through the air. However, Chang.Sun was faster, slicing through his midsection with Tiamat Snaggletooth. Gush! Bleeding profusely, the player rolled across the floor, his torso completely separated from his lower body. In mere moments, Chang.Sun sliced off the player's arms with the sharp blade of Tiamat Snaggletooth, and stabbed him in the heart. Snick! Ack! Eck! The player groaned, trembling as bloody foam spewed from his mouth. The sheer amount of blood he had lost made him feel as if death itself were gripping his throat, as anemia rapidly set in. Don't kill me, he begged tearfully. Although he was staring death in the face, he still seemed to have an instinctive desire to live. Despite how little he cared about the lives of others, he still cared deeply about his own. Like a snake watching its prey, Chang.Sun skillfully used viper eyes, as he asked, "Do you want to live?" "I do," the player desperately answered. "Then tell me everything you know about what's happening inside, how many people are inside, and how strong they are," Chang.Sun said, looking the player in the eye. The player screamed, trembling as he was unable to avoid eye contact with Chang.Sunday. That was simply how intimidating Chang.Sun was. His divine twilight years were partly responsible for that, but it was mainly due to the strong stench of death that had permeated him during his stay in the underworld. Most people would lose consciousness simply from looking into his eyes, the man had to reveal everything he knew in the end, as if he had been hypnotized. There are 30 people inside, but I guess I only have to be careful of a man named Song. Chang Sun concluded after comparing his current status with the information he had just heard. It seemed he would have to use some tricks in order to fight against all of them at once. I told you, so you have to save, the player tried to say, grasping at straws. However. Oh, that. Chang Sun answered with a smirk, thinking that the player was trying too hard for a person who would die anyway from severe blood loss if he just left the man lying there. Equipped the Flame Tiger's Fang Dagger. I just asked whether you wanted to live, but I don't think I said anything about sparing you, did I? Chang Sun continued, tilting his head. Slash. Chang Sun mercilessly severed the player's head, watching it roll across the floor. The expression on the player's face appeared as if he had been about to say, liar. Level up. The celestial world encircling serpent enjoys your great wordplay. The celestial abyss, chasing great devil nods lightly as he smells the grim stench of death. When Chang Sun stood up again, the 15 civilians moved far away from him, staying on guard against him. They reacted that way because they did not know how the man who had suddenly appeared would react, but Chang Sun did not even look in their direction at all. The authority, soul exploitation, has been activated. All the bodies outside the dungeon had been incinerated in the purgatory brazier. Just like them, the corpses inside the tomb quickly turned to ashes and were absorbed into Chang Sun's body. Pzzzzz. The shadow of death writhed ominously as it crept across the tomb's interior. Chapter 25. Star, Home, 10, you are listening at novelfull.audio. Rumbly. 3 of the High-Off clan's players were patrolling a hallway in the tomb when they suddenly heard the sound of rumbling. One of them exclaimed. Is something wrong? Well. I think I felt the ground shaking and even heard someone screaming. Didn't you hear it? What the hell are you talking about? Are you seeing things because you've been stuck in a cave for too long? Could that be it? Where the hell is that Li Chang Sun guy? Section Chief Li Song had assigned them a simple mission to accomplish on their patrol. A man named Li Chang Sun had appeared in the dungeon ranking out of the blue, so they had to find him. This Chang Sun was quite unique. When his name first appeared in the ranking, he had already been in 50.7th place, and that number only continued to climb. He was already in 20.1st place on the dungeon ranking. Considering the fact that only a few hours had passed after he first entered the dungeon, Chang Sun was climbing the ranks at a ridiculous speed, meaning he was disabling several of the dungeon's traps in a very short time. It seemed that Chang Sun would end up in front of the boss monster's room in no time if Song did nothing. Thus, he instructed his subordinates to quickly eliminate Chang Sun, as he was unsure what the other man had seen in this place. In order to silence him for good, Song was planning to use Chang Sun as a supplementary ingredient for blood. His subordinates had accepted the order without question. They felt no guilt, as they had already taken care of several reporters before. One player in the patrol group started up a conversation, saying, by the way, it's a bit funny. What is? The intruder's name is Li Chang Sunday. Ah, tyrant. Yeah, I heard a lot of rumors about how he became an alcoholic after his retirement and did crazy stuff while he was drunk. I think he's just an attention seeker, wanting to be noticed. From what I heard, he got entangled in the Jamsil Gate. Why do you know so much about him? Hee hee. I was Tyrant's fan because I liked his nasty temper. You're one consistent fuck-up. The patrol group chatted incessantly while they searched for Chang Sunday. They believed that no matter how talented the intruder was, he would never be able to fight against all of them, the elite players of the High-Off clan. They also knew the dungeon better than anyone else due to their frequent patrols, and another group was following them not so far behind. Surely, the other group would aid them immediately if something happened. That was why they failed to realize that they had not heard anything from the other group for a long time, even though the other group should have reported their status at regular intervals. In truth, the player who had written off the screaming he heard as a coincidence had not misheard it at all. "Huh," one player exclaimed in surprise as he suddenly stopped and tilted his head in confusion. "What's wrong? Shouldn't we have met up with the group 6 guys right about now?" Each patrol group was supposed to patrol an assigned route at a set time, so some patrol groups were bound to run into each other. That meant they should have already run into Group 6, but the other group was absent. Something was off. His teammate yawned loudly and casually answered, "One of them might have gone to the toilet. You know their leader is Sir Pupsalot." "No, something is weird." "Ha. You're being paranoid again, man. The only thing we found the last time you did this was an elk." "Ha." The second player stopped in the middle of criticizing the first player, suddenly looking down as a stone about the size of a human fist came rolling toward him. "Where did this come from? Is someone playing a prank on me?" He wondered before looking away. The first player abruptly yelled, "Hey! Move!" "Wah!" His teammate blinked, beginning to ask what the first player was talking about. However, he was cut short as a strange symbol inscribed on the stone began to shine, then abruptly exploded, scattering stone fragments and smoke, along with pieces of his head, all over the place. The 2 surviving players simultaneously realized that they had been ambushed, and quickly tried to draw their weapons. However, they were no longer able to move. When the stone exploded, the smoke it released had entered their lungs and paralyzed them. "Pzzz, you are poisoned. You are poisoned. You have sustained a fatal injury." Those were the last messages the last 2 players ever saw. They collapsed on the floor, foaming at the mouth as their insides melted from the deadly toxin. Their muscles continued to spasm, but their movements soon ceased as Chang Sun severed their heads. "There are 18 people left now, right?" Chang Sun quietly muttered, pulling Tiamat's snaggletooth out of a corpse. The purgatory brazier blazed, quickly incinerating the 3 corpses. He had been steadily reducing the number of enemies present the same way he dealt with that group, ambushing them using similar round stones. Each stone was similar to a grenade. In order to make them, he had used skill unification to combine the effects of his blood toxin with an explosion rune. I never thought runes and blood toxin would be such a good match. This combination is going to come in handy from now on, considering how I can also use it in trap installation. Chang Sun thought, smiling faintly. Each stone would detonate on impact due to the explosion rune carved on it, causing the blood toxin on it to spread through the air along with the smoke and fragments. Chang Sun had chosen biotoxin for the current situation in order to ensure that the toxin would spread very quickly through the target's respiratory systems. Some players with great toxin resistance could withstand it for a while, but they would still be paralyzed and unable to do much in response. There were 13 people left by the time Chang Sun got close to the final room where the boss monster resided. Chang Sun moved quietly once again, following the guidance of Viper Eyes. His movements were like that of a prowling beast, carefully hunting its prey. Not even an hour passed before Jae Song noticed that something was off. The dungeon ranking has been updated. Dungeon ranking, 1st place. Zhongyu Jin, 150,000 points, 2nd place. Go Sung, 145,495 points, 3rd place. Li Jae Song, 109,500 points, 11th place. Li Chang Sun, update. 50.7th place, 40.2nd place, 20.1st place, and 11th place. Those were the ranks the person named Li Chang Sun had achieved in just a few hours. At first, Jae Song had simply thought that a reckless, stupid player had entered the dungeon. Although there were some guards outside, some fairly talented players snuck in from time to time. Those players were not much of a problem because they often got stuck on the complicated dungeon quests, so J.Song's subordinates normally just waited until they got tired and took them out. However, things were different today. Song wondered whether something had gone wrong. Was the ranking system broken? If the system was fine, how could a person increase their rank so quickly? He had an even bigger problem, which was that he distinctly remembered ordering his subordinates to capture the mysterious intruder. He was already having a headache because of Jean Day, Juan. He did not want to care about anything else, let alone a strange, irritating fly. Why aren't they coming back? Song thought, shaking his leg. The dungeon ranking was updating constantly, but his subordinates had not returned even after a long time. If they were having trouble fighting the intruder on their own, they should have reported it to him, but he had not even heard any reports. It was as if they had disappeared completely from this world, leaving only him behind. Hey! Is anybody outside? Song shouted from within his tent. Normally, shouting like that would bring some subordinates running, but no one appeared. The only response he received was silent. You bastards! Can't you hear me? Song cursed angrily. Soon, however, his anxiety compelled him to stand up. He planned to go outside and call for his subordinates. If they're just getting on my nerves for no reason, I'll just use every last one of them to make more blood. However, it was still quiet outside. Ding! The dungeon ranking has been updated. Dungeon ranking, 8th place. Li Chang, Sun, update. The dungeon ranking just happened to update again at that moment. Song could not help but feel nervous when he saw the new information. Trying to fight back his anxiety, he aggressively flung open the tent's entrance and headed outside. Several of his subordinates should have been outside, but the whole area was empty. Despite that, the blazing fire and tools strewn across the floor indicated that several people had recently been present. Ding! The dungeon ranking has been updated. Dungeon ranking, 6th place. Li Chang, Sun, update. When he saw the dungeon ranking, Song felt as if invisible hands were grabbing his throat and choking him. He yelled angrily, fuck. These bastards must be slacking off. Where the hell did they disappear to? I have to get rid of this weird anxiety. That was the only thought that filled Song's mind. However. Ding! The dungeon ranking has been updated. Dungeon ranking, 4th place. Li Chang, Sun, update. As if it were mocking him, the notification bell continued to ring. Ding! Ding! The message alarm that had always brought joy to Song was only serving to unsettle him today. He felt dizzy, as if he were being strangled. Phuck! Where did they go? Song cursed as he nervously moved around, aimlessly searching the nearby area. He went through the other tents where his subordinates stayed, the whole camp, and the guard posts. Surrounded by the horrible silence, he could barely breathe. He felt as if he would go mad unless he found someone else, but the area was deserted. It felt like a ghost town, where all the inhabitants had simply evaporated. Ding! The dungeon ranking has been updated. Dungeon ranking, 3rd place. Li Chang, Sun, update. 4th place. Li Song, 109,500 points. When Song saw the name Li Chang, Sun, rise above his name in the dungeon ranking, he belatedly realized what emotion had been dominating his body and mind. It was fear. Fear brought by the ghost named Li Chang. Sunday. Fear that he was trapped in this silent place alone, when all his subordinates had disappeared. Your mind has been contaminated. Your mind has been contaminated. You have fallen into the feared state. Ha! Li Chang. Sunday. Where are you? I know you're out there. Come out. Come on. Come out. Song ranted as if he had gone half mad, swinging his sword like a lunatic after clumsily drawing it. He thought, no, he was certain that Chang Sun was hiding and watching him from somewhere. It made no sense otherwise. Ding! Dungeon ranking, 2nd place. Li Chang Sun update. Amid all the chaos, Chang Sun had continued to climb the dungeon ranking. Jae Song finally realized how Chang Sun had improved his ranking so quickly. From the achievements players unlocked while completing quests to the number of monsters and other enemies they killed, every action in a dungeon was converted to points. In short, Jae Song's subordinates had been killed extremely quickly. Judging from Chang Sun's rank, it was safe to assume that everybody else was already dead. Jae Song could never have imagined that they would be completely wiped out, and he was incapable of logically understanding what was going on. It would at least take a renowned player to annihilate Jae Song's team, but he had no idea who the enemy was, as he had never heard of Chang Sun before. He at least needed some clue in order to come up with a way to defeat his enemy, but he had none, leaving him incredibly frustrated. A shiver ran down his spine. Rather than anxiety, he was now overwhelmed with terror, making him feel as if he had fallen into the depths of the ocean to drown. Am I going to end up like my subordinates? Jae Song thought. It terrified him, as he had always dreamed of glory, not a mere dog's death. Save, a man choked out, barely within earshot. Jae Song heard the voice of Deputy Section Chief Sun, who normally always catered to his every need. Thinking he would be able to find some clues about his enemy, he ran in the direction where Deputy Chief Sun's voice had come from. Just as expected, Deputy Chief Sun lay collapsed on the floor, but Jae Song was not sure whether he could still call the other man a human. Deputy Chief Sun was more comparable to a burnt lump of meat, or a heap of trash soaked in blood. Every one of his limbs was severed, and the only part of his body that remained intact was his mouth. He would no doubt die if Jae Song left him behind. Hey! Wake up, Deputy Chief Sun! Jae Song yelled as he ran toward Deputy Chief Sun, grasping at the final straws of hope he had left. Save me! Deputy Chief Sun simply repeated as if he could not hear a single word, instead of giving Jae Song an answer. Ghost, is Komi. Straining to hear more details, Jae Song flipped over Deputy Chief Sun, who was lying face down. Then, he found something unexpected. From Deputy Chief Sun's chest to his lower abdomen, his body was covered in strange symbols that Jae Song had never seen in his life. The first emotion that struck Jae Song when he saw the symbols was terror, and he was right to be afraid. The symbols that covered Deputy Chief Sun's body were runes, and they began to shine brightly. The Deputy Chief had been turned into a booby trap, a living dummy engraved all over with explosion runes. Boom, boom, boom. The corpse trap was extremely powerful, and the massive blast covered Jae Song completely with broken bone fragments, scraps of meat and pieces of brain. Every last shred was covered with acidic toxin and corpse toxin, melting Jae Song's flesh. The room filled with white smoke that carried the vile stench of rot. TSSSS. Eric. Jae Song screamed loudly. You have sustained horrific burns. You have been poisoned with corpse toxin. You have been poisoned with acidic toxin. Warning. Your HP is quickly decreasing. Attempt to detoxify yourself as soon as possible. You have fallen into the brink of death state. Jae Song had bent over to move Deputy Chief Sun's body. That meant his whole face and upper body had been exposed directly to the explosion, and his face was already starting to melt completely. Rolling across the floor, Jae Song screamed at the top of his lungs and tried to stop the poison from spreading by circulating his magic. He tried to pull out a bottle of detoxifying potion from his inventory, but he could not see, so his hand just hovered in the air. Death is approaching. Swoosh. Chang Sun approached stealthily, running toward Jae Song. Jae Song was an expert player in the level 30 range, meaning he was at least 10 levels above Chang. Sunday. On top of that, Jae Song had many subordinates, which had meant he was supposed to be unkillable. However, the entire process had not been difficult for Chang Sun, who enjoyed hunting. It was now time to finish his hunt. Chapter 26 Star, The Golden Key, 1, you are listening at novelfull.audio. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, encourages you to quickly take care of your enemies. The Celestial, Twilight, Piercing Owl, watches you trying to implement justice. Fuck. Lee Jae Song screamed at the top of his lungs, roughly swinging his claymore, a big sword that was usually wielded with two hands, in the air. Clash. Chang Sun nearly severed his head with Tiamat Snaggletooth, but Jae Song deflected his attack, making his eyes momentarily shine with interest. He can even block that. Chang Sun thought in surprise, but that was not the only surprise. Jae Song, I'll kill you. Jae Song shouted, gritting his teeth. Whoosh, whoosh. Rumble, rumble, rumble. As Jae Song swung his claymore through the air at random, Chang Sun could hear the slashes creating powerful air currents that swept the floor clear before crashing into the walls. It was the very definition of a rampage. Chang Sun felt as if he were watching a bull that was agitated from seeing a waving red cloth. Clash, clash, clash. Avoiding whatever he could avoid and deflecting whatever he could deflect, Chang Sun slowly stepped back. Jae Song was too overwhelmingly powerful for him to make a frontal attack. Is he following my movements instinctively even though he can't see me? I guess he does know how to fight. Chang Sun thought. Despite his overall disadvantage, he was not overwhelmed with confusion and rationally evaluated Jae Song. Jae Song was strong. Although Chang Sun had heard that Jae Song was in the level 30 range, his combat instinct was far superior to ordinary level 30s, which indicated that he had a lot of experience doing his job. Even considering that Jae Song had been soaked with Chang Sun's blood toxin, it would be difficult for Chang Sun to win in 1.1 combat against him. Maybe he has a skill that can amplify his strength in times of crisis. Chang Sun speculated. Whatever the truth was, Jae Song was more talented than Chang Sun had thought. The Hyoff clan likely valued Jae Song for his talent. His presence made Chang Sun certain that something special was in the dungeon, otherwise, the clan would not have assigned such a talented individual to it. It's also strange for the clan to take this risk of continuously using human sacrifices in such a safe country. Chang Sun thought, recalling how he had hidden the sacrifices that he had rescued and relocated to a safe place, telling them to wait until he finished the dungeon. It was a temporary measure to protect the sacrifices, as he was unsure when the Hyoff clan's reinforcements would arrive from outside. In reality, human trafficking and kidnapping always left a long trail, more than people usually expected. No matter how powerful the politicians backing the Hyoff clan were, it did not change the fact that such things were very dangerous. Despite all the risks, the Hyoff clan continued to do so, which meant there was something they desperately wanted. Of course, recruiting O Yezi's disciple already meant the Hyoff clan was pursuing a big secret, making Chang Sun even more intrigued. When he had entered the dungeon, his original goal was to create a connection with O Yezi's heir, but he now had even more of a desire to discover and steal the Hyoff clan's secret. Then, I should kill him more quickly. The Hyoff clan must have noticed that a problem had occurred in the dungeon by now. Chang Sun thought, analyzing the situation. From what he had heard, the personnel in the dungeon frequently communicated with the Hyoff clan's head office to monitor its status, so the clan must have sent reinforcements by now. In that case, Chang Sun thought with a smile. Distributed 30 additional points to strength. 5181, distributed 30 additional points to agility. 4979, if Chang Sun lacked strength compared to his enemy, all he had to do was add more strength. That likewise applied if he lacked agility. If he could close the gap in both stats at the same time, it would not only level the playing field against his enemy, but also create a synergistic effect that would allow him to defeat his enemy with overwhelming power. Boom! What the? Jae Sung was clearly baffled, taking a few steps backward. When he struck Chang Sun, he felt as if he had smashed his claymore into a sturdy wall, making the blade shake violently enough to nearly tear apart the skin of his palms. Had the air around Chang Sun changed? He had suddenly become stronger, almost as if he had turned into an entirely different person. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, enjoys watching Chang Sun's overwhelming attacks against his enemy. The Celestial, World, Encircling Serpent watches the fight with excitement, saying Chang Sun is indeed the slyest person around. Chang Sun sprang forth again, kicking off the ground with such force that he crushed the brick floor, sending stone fragments flying into the air. Even Jae Song's rampage had only left scratches on those very same bricks. Boom! 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 Every time Chang Sun struck Jae Song with Tiamat's snaggletooth, he was knocked back. He was sure that Chang Sun was using a sword, but the sound of explosions kept ringing in his ears, as if Chang Sun were shooting cannonballs. Reached the maximum level of the skill, intermediate dagger proficiency. A higher level skill has been created. The skill, advanced dagger proficiency, has been created. Seeming almost as if it would shatter at any second, Jae Song's claymore shook intensely as cracks spread across its blade. It did not take long for Jae Song's hands to become ragged and bloody. At that moment. Shatter. Jae Song's claymore snapped in half, unable to withstand Chang Sun's attacks any longer. As pieces of shattered metal flew through the air, an expression of shock spread across Jae Song's face as he screamed. It doesn't make sense. Arf. Slash, slash, slash. Chang Sun quickly cut off Jae Song's right hand and left arm, while leaving several large and small cuts all over the man's legs and body. Next, he attacked from below, breaking Jae Song's jaw with the flat of his blade. Ugh! Jae Song tried to say he could not believe what was happening, but he could not get the words out, as broken teeth flew into the air from his smashed jaw. He fell backward, spewing bloody foam from his mouth. "You're odd," Chang Sun remarked with a smirk when he looked at Jae Song. "You should already have known that you could also be butchered when you did the same to others." He turned Tiamat's snaggletooth horizontally. Slash. That was the end of it. Jae Song's head flew into the air amid the horrible sound of tearing flesh. His face had already melted from the toxins, so even people who knew Jae Song would not recognize him. The authority, soul exploitation, has been activated. You have lit the fire in the purgatory brazier, successfully acquiring the ashes of the player Lee Jae Song. 6% of your stamina has been regained. TSSS. Engulfed in the purgatory brazier's fire, Jae Song's body instantly turned into ashes that were all absorbed into Chang Sun through his shadow. The celestial, Twilight, piercing owl, is deeply moved by your righteousness. It's funny every time I see righteousness or justice in the messages. Chang Sun thought in amusement, as he had once been called a fiend and put on divine trial. The celestial, Twilight, piercing owl gives you a new bonus reward. Acquired the skill, Composed Spirit. Composed Spirit, the celestial, Twilight, piercing owl, has given this bonus reward for executing perfect justice against evil enemies. It specializes in protecting you from mental debuffs. One with a composed spirit has wisdom and courage that will never waver in the face of chaos. Type. Blessing. Protection. Effect. Immunity to mental debuffs. Maintain courage. She's also giving me, composed spirit. Chang Sun thought. He could understand why Minerva had given him, unbending spirit, but he had not expected her to also give him, composed spirit. They had similar effects, but they worked based on completely different mechanisms. Unbending spirit made a person able to judge things dispassionately based on absolute truth, or logos. Composed spirit made a person able to break the cycle of agony in a world full of temptation and pleasure. In other words, unbending spirit sought truth in the external world and was based on philosophical absolutism. Composed spirit sought to cultivate the internal world and was based on philosophical relativism. If the two skills joined together, they would complement each other perfectly, forming a union between an individual's external and internal worlds. Some truth seekers referred to such a moment as nirvana. I'm going to become a monk if this continues. Chang Sun thought, laughing wryly without realizing it. He had an idea of how Minerva thought of him, a righteous, silent monk who sought truth. She could not have misunderstood the situation more, considering how atrocious Chang Sun's true thoughts were. From what I heard, she was a wise and clever warring deity, and very scary. Despite the rumors, though, she just seems, a simpleton. Chang Sun thought as he sensed the birth of a new sugar deity after Pabelsag. The celestial, a good season to hunt, becomes nervous when she sees the 2 bonus rewards sent by Twilight, piercing owl. The celestial, a good season to hunt, rummages through her treasure warehouse, searching for something that can be given to you as a new bonus reward. Well, she can't win against this sugar deity yet. Chang Sun thought smugly. Pa. Lost in his thoughts, Chang Sun inadvertently reached the final room of the dungeon soon after passing by J. Song's tent. The dungeon ranking has been updated. Dungeon ranking, 1st place. Li Chang Sun, update. 2nd place. Zhongyu Jin, 150,000 points. Chang Sun found himself in front of a giant stone gate, roughly 5 meters tall. You have arrived at the boss monster's room. The boss monster's room is currently locked tightly. There is a key somewhere inside the dungeon, so find and unlock the gate's lock. From the sight of the blackened spots and blade scars left across the surface of the stone gate, Chang Sun could tell how much effort the Hyoff clan had put in to try to force the gate open so far. However, there was not a single crack, or a sign that the gate had been previously moved. That meant they had to have failed. It was not difficult for Chang Sun to find the portable workshop, as it was right in front of the stone gate. He saw a cloud of white smoke billowing out of the chimney, but he could not detect anybody inside. He bolted. Well, I did create havoc, so he must have noticed it and run away, Chang Sun thought without worrying too much about it. After all, there was only one route from J. Song's tent to the portable workshop, meaning Jin Dae Hwan could never run away even if he had wings. Crash. Feeling no need to observe any longer, Chang Sun quickly destroyed the portable workshop by roughly swinging Tiamat's snaggletooth. His strikes knocked the furnace inside over, sending molten metal spilling across the floor and setting the pieces of the workshop ablaze. The Saint Fire Furnace. I can see why they kept failing to make the key. Chang Sun thought with a snort as he looked at the fire. They could not have used the Divine Fire Furnace, but if they had obtained the Aeon Fire Furnace, no, even the Purification Fire Furnace would have been sufficient to allow the clan to make the key successfully. Chang Sun could not believe that they had used the Saint Fire Furnace. Saint Fire was certainly a good celestial fire, as it had the ability to purify things and restore broken items. However, that was it, the Saint Fire was not a powerful fire to begin with. Without considering its properties, the clan had shoved in human souls as kindling, trying to forcibly strengthen the fire. However, instead of becoming stronger, it had only become weaker, due to the repulsion between 2 completely opposing properties. It looks like there's nothing else to dig up, Chang Sun muttered with a sigh. He had been planning on asking Dae Hwan several questions, hoping to hear any secrets about Yezi. However, he could tell that Dae Huan had nothing, considering the man's abysmal judgment of the situation. Equipped the flame goat's rib spear. After pulling out a bone spear from his inventory, Chang Sun threw it sideways without even looking. Swoosh, stab. Arg. Day, Huan, who had been hiding inside a room behind the wall Chang Sun penetrated with the bone spear, fell flat on his face. He left no last words, dying instantly. However, his corpse was holding tightly onto an unusually ancient-looking hammer. Chang Sun instantly identified it as Oh Yezi's hammer, the item he had been looking for. S hammer, an unidentified hammer. It seems to be made out of a meteorite. Due to its age, it seems. Has made the hammer. Type. Hammer. Effect. Unknown. Asterisk you are unable to use this because you are not the owner. Meteorite, huh? Chang Sun thought as he felt the hammer's grip. Meteorites were star fragments, making them invaluable as a material. The item could be none other than the relic used by Oh Yezi. After throwing the hammer into his inventory, Chang Sun stood in front of the stone gate, his other interest. Tap. Tap. As Chang Sun lightly tapped on the gate, he felt how thick it was, making him realize that he could not smash through it with his current power. It would make little difference even if he carved several explosive runes on the gate. I think Bu Yong could make the key somehow. He thought with a nod. With the divine fire furnace and Oh Yezi's hammer, it was more than possible. However, the High-Off clan would never leave Choi Bu Yong alone. I don't have to use a more difficult method when I have an easier method. Chang Sun thought. He took a step backward from the iron gate, glancing backward. Herald, you're there, right? Chang Sun called out. Herald soon appeared through a diagonal slit in midair. The rabbit-headed man with red eyes seemed baffled, belatedly realizing what favor Chang Sun was going to ask of him. Regardless, a deal was a deal. As they had even formed a mana pledge, he could lose his administrator status if he rejected Chang Sun's request. Open it now, Chang Sun said, gesturing at the stone gate with his chin. 1. Meteorites are rocks from space in real life, but in this novel, the author seems to be referring to the mythological connotations of meteorites instead. Chapter 27. Star, the Golden Key. 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The rules state that administrators cannot interfere with dungeon quests, Harold muttered, trying to weasel out of the request. Crossing his arms, Chang Sun just snorted, saying, "Stop talking nonsense. Those rules can change depending on the situation. You don't have to do it if you don't want to, but you'll also have to stop writing the about me," Chang Sun said with a shrug. Harold briefly had a long face, because he had already finished the he intended to submit to his superiors. However, if Chang Sun took away the reporting rights, the would also be taken away, meaning all of Harold's efforts would go down the drain. I'm definitely going to be reprimanded, so I hope I can get away with just a salary cut. Harold thought bitterly. Just as Chang Sun had said, an administrator could interfere with dungeon quests in a contingency, but they had to face consequences for their interference. Alright, fine. I will grant your favor, Harold said, adjusting his monocle. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, laughs her head off, saying the administrator's bewildered expression looks funny. The Celestial World Encircling Serpent exclaims in awe at your resourcefulness. Pretending not to have noticed Pabelsag and J. Rumungandra's amused looks, Harold lightly flicked his fingers. The closed stone gate has been opened with the administrator's power. Beyond the stone gate, there was a hallway lined with arches, at the end of which lay a giant stone chamber. The room had a tall altar at the center, which meant Chang Sun would have to climb its 12 steps in order to get to the top. Atop the altar was a gold coffin with bronze braziers on either side of it, where the tomb's owner appeared to be resting. Without hesitation, Chang Sun entered the stone chamber. Its walls and domed ceiling were lined with holy icons that began shining brightly as he entered. Whoosh! You have entered the boss monster's room. Several curses have begun to affect you. From now on, the dungeon's owner will try to seize your body. You must climb up to the altar and destroy the gold coffin while resisting until the end. If you fail to resist, you may lose your body, so be careful. Unfortunately, it seemed the holy icons were actually unholy ones. The eyes of the figures lining the walls all turned red, emanating a force that tried to infiltrate Chang-Sun's mind. Badump. Badump. Chang-Sun's eyes also turned red as a sinister voice echoed inside his head, making him stop walking. How dare such a lowly being as you try to interrupt our eternal sleep? Give me your flesh. The voice gave Chang-Sun 3 orders, throwing his mind into turmoil. Obey. Worship. Stand in awe. The air in the chamber weighed heavily on Chang-Sun's shoulders, making his knees creak beneath the pressure. Hypnosis has begun. Brainwashing has begun. The boss monster room's quest was very simple. Chang-Sun had to protect his mind from the tomb's owner, whose spirit was all that remained after death. Despite how straightforward it seemed to be, the objective was anything but simple or easy, as the tomb's owner had a very high divine class before their death. No ordinary player would be able to resist such an attack, even if only the owner's spirit remained. It's not going to be easy, is it? Even he won't be able to defeat this easily. Harold thought as he wrote the last section of the It Was True that Chang-Sun was something special, considering how he had perfectly cleared the tutorial and wiped out every other player in this dungeon. Chang-Sun's combat instincts, which Harold could only consider an innate talent, even made Harold exclaim in awe from time to time. However, that only applied to Chang-Sun's physical prowess. His mental strength could very well be different. Many physically strong people were also mentally strong, but there was no guarantee of that, as they were different kinds of strength. If Chang-Sun were mentally strong, he would likely have become a wizard or a cleric early on. However, from what Harold had seen, he always preferred to use his body in combat. Those who preferred to fight using their bodies often trusted their physical prowess so much that they were often negligent in cultivating their mental strength. Harold thought Chang-Sun could be one of those people. The Chang-Sun he had seen so far was incredibly arrogant, the farthest thing from humble. Wait. Harold belatedly realized what he had written in the first chapter of the Chang-Sun's class was Rune Master. That was the wizard-type secret class that leveled up at a slower pace than any other wizard class, and had incredibly difficult skills. Without great persistence and a stable foundation of mental strength, someone could never be successful as a rune master. Despite all the disadvantages, however, Chang-Sun was leveling up at a ridiculous speed as a rune master, even without any guardian. Since Chang-Sun rarely used runes directly and only treated them as supplementary tools in combat, Harold had overlooked the fact that Chang-Sun was a rune master. This is unbelievable! Harold exclaimed, feeling as if he wanted to scream. Boom! Rumbly! Just as a loud explosion shook the stone chamber. Harold saw a cloud of white mist being repelled forcefully after trying to possess Chang-Sun. The shockwave created by the explosion was so powerful that it caused the unholy icons to crack, destroying all the curse. Inflicting red eyes at once. Ridiculous. The cloud of mist gathered at one point, forming the outline of a human head. The spirit left by the tomb owner, Bestla, screamed, Chang-Sun was supposed to be the vessel they had long been waiting for. All the other people who had disrespectfully intruded on the tomb had failed to satisfy Bestla, leaving them immensely displeased. They approved of the person who had opened the gate, but they had been violently pushed back even before they could break through Chang-Sun's mental barriers. Do I have to thank Twilight, piercing owl? Chang-Sun remarked with a grin. The celestial, Twilight, piercing owl, gently smiles. The skill Unbending Spirit has been activated, protecting your mind from outside intrusions. The skill Composed Spirit has been activated, strengthening your mental barriers. Lightly fixing his hair with one hand, Chang Sun smiled coldly at Bestla's spirit. The Unbending Spirit and Composed Spirit skills that Minerva had given him as bonus rewards were more useful than Chang Sun initially thought. Bestla's spirit was quite powerful for such a dungeon's owner, and Chang Sun could have ended up in trouble if he let his guard down. However, Bestla's spirit seemed to have a different opinion from Chang Sunday. Don't be ridiculous. We weren't forced back because of skills granted by a mere Twilight piercing owl. You talk too much, Chang Sun retorted as he gripped Tiamat's snaggletooth tightly, thinking Bestla's spirit would just keep blathering unnecessarily if he didn't silence her. The skill to Viper Eyes reveals the enemy's weakness. Pa! Chang Sun quickly rushed forward to the gold coffin atop the altar. To be exact, he was aiming for the blue jewel on the tip of the coffin. Viper Eyes had marked the jewel red, which meant it was Bestla's spirit's core. The celestial world encircling serpent watches you with a piercing gaze. No, Bestla's spirit swiftly leaped at Chang Sun, but they had few abilities other than mental debuffs, due to lacking a body. Eventually, Chang Sun broke through the defense put up by Bestla's spirit and smashed the jewel with Tiamat's snaggletooth. Crack. Kia. No nu. Bestla's spirit began to writhe in midair. They tried to resist, but a vortex appeared amid the horrific wailing of ghosts, quickly swallowing their spirit. Krayakak. At the same time, cracks spread all across the gold coffin, and it quickly crumbled into pieces. Chang Sun had expected to see a corpse or a mummy, but there was nothing there, only a small wooden box lying amid the cloud of orange dust dispersing through the air. This is the treasure box the High-Off clan tried to get. What's in this box, that's so important the clan even risked offering human sacrifices? Chang Sun thought as he opened the wooden box without hesitation. However, a key. Chang Sun thought, squinting at the object inside, a key that seemed to be made from the same golden material as the coffin. The key had a straight shaft with 3 prongs on one end, and a large red jewel on the other. Peter's key, a key that can be used to open something. Its use is indiscernible at present. Type. Miscellaneous. Effect. Unknown. Peter's key. Not Bestla's. Chang Sun thought, tilting his head in confusion because the key's owner was different from the tomb's owner. Perhaps the tomb's owner had acquired it in life, and it had been buried with her. It looks as if I need to fulfill a special condition to figure out its use. Chang Sun thought, pulling out Peter's key, and examining it closely. He had seen many sacred objects and relics, but he was unsure how to use the key. On top of that, he had never even heard of any such sacred object as Peter's key, leaving him baffled. It doesn't seem like an ordinary miscellaneous item. Chang Sun thought. Although he was unable to discover its true power, he was sure it was no ordinary key, judging from the craftsmanship that had gone into making it and the quality of the materials used. In the end, he threw Peter's key in his inventory, planning to torture High-Off clan members to discover its use. Just then, the dungeon quest has been completed. Compiling the final ranking. Dungeon ranking, first place. Li Chang Sun, 175,550 points. Different rewards will be given out based on performance. Different rewards will be given out based on ranking. While Chang Sun was reading the messages that appeared before his eyes. New players have entered the dungeon. Backup has arrived. Chang Sun thought. He knew that the new players were the High-Off clan's reinforcements. They had no doubt hurried to send backup after finding out that their forces inside the dungeon were unreachable. Chang Sun was sure that they must have been taken aback when they saw the disaster outside. They're too late, though, Chang Sun thought with a smirk. The dungeon is closing. 5.4. A dungeon and its gate would close after the completion of a dungeon quest, having served their purpose. That phenomenon was known as closure. Rumble. When he saw the crumbling ceiling, Chang Sun thought of the annoyance the Hyoff clan would no doubt feel. If a dungeon underwent closure, any evidence left within it would disappear. Chang Sun assumed that the Hyoff clan's reinforcements would be freaking out due to the messages they no doubt received right after entering the dungeon. 1.0. The dungeon is now completely closed. Great work, everyone. Pa. A ray of black light swallowed the dungeon. It took a long time for Chang Sun to return to the Choi Li Forge. While waiting for him, Choi Bu Yong had been nervously back and forth within the forge. He had just sat down in his chair for a moment when his dog, Wilson, heard a stranger's footsteps and began barking. However, Bu Yong could tell the stranger was actually Chang Sunday. Hey, you! Bu Yong called out with a frown, even though he was secretly relieved. However, he was interrupted mid-sentence. Catch, Chang Sun said as he threw something in Bu Yong's direction. Bu Yong hurriedly reached out and barely managed to catch it. Despite the difficulty, however, he moved so quickly it was as if he could see normally. He realized that the object Chang Sun had thrown at him was made of metal, and was about to yell, "What the hell is wrong with you?" But he soon realized what he was holding and began to tremble. Everything about the metal object was familiar, its texture, its material, and so on. This is... Bu Yong exclaimed, standing up from his chair. You can start making stuff now that I've brought you the hammer, right? Chang Sun asked with a grin. Bu Yong opened and closed his mouth like a goldfish, his mind full of questions. How on earth had Chang Sun obtained the hammer? How had Chang Sun defeated the Hyoff clan's players when the dungeon was under the clan's direct management? What had happened to his senior brother? However, Bu Yong swallowed all those questions back down. He nodded, seemingly steadying his resolve before saying, "Okay, but just as I told you, a 1-month deadline isn't enough. I haven't used a hammer for a long time, so I have to get the hang of it and readjust my furnace." Chang Sun felt as if Bu Yong's way of speaking had somehow changed a lot. The current Bu Yong would be aptly described by words such as vigorous and energetic. He no longer seemed like a walking corpse, it was as if he had risen from the dead. If he had not lost his eyes, they would surely be sparkling like the stars in the sky. As he watched Bu Yong, Chang Sun smiled faintly before saying, "The weapons I need right now are a whip, a long spear, and a shield. I'm not in a hurry to get the rest of them, so you can give me those weapons whenever you finish making them." "Give me the order of priority," Bu Yong said as he sat back down. "As I said, I need a whip first." "You can decide the rest on your own," Chang Sun replied with a shrug. "The shield will take at least half a year due to the materials needed." "I'll make the whip first and the long spear after," Bu Yong said, crossing his arms. "Will it be difficult to get materials for the shield?" Chang Sun asked, leaning against the table. "Yes, but I have some connections, so it should take only 15 days, Bu Yong replied with a nod. "A week," Chang Sun said concisely. "What? Making a whip alone will take more than 2 weeks." Bu Yong protested, looking at Chang Sunday. "From getting the hang of using your hammer again to making the whip and the long spear. Finish everything in 1 month. Since I'm giving you a short deadline, I'll pay you triple," Chang Sun said, looking back at Bu Yong. "Fuck," Bu Yong cursed. He frowned again as Chang Sun continued to throw money in his face. The fact that he lived in the world of capitalism saddened him. "I'll take that as a yes, so I'll return in a month." "Oh yeah. This is also for sale, right? I'll take it, Chang Sun said, before standing up and bidding Bu Yong goodbye. Bu Yong quickly snapped back to reality the moment he sensed Chang Sun taking the fire poker that had been left lying beside the divine fire furnace. Chang Sun could take everything else, but Bu Yong could not let him take the fire poker. It was a very old bronze sword, but his father had called it the family heirloom. Bu Yong could not give the sword away. He stood up, shouting, "Hey, that's Li Chang Sun has deposited 100 million won into your W bank account. Bu Yong's smartphone read him a message. That's for the sword, and we can call it even with the hammer. Shouldn't that be enough? You were just using it as a fire poker in the first place, so it doesn't matter, right?" Chang Sun replied as he left the forge. Bu Yong stood silently for a long time, unable to comprehend just how much money Chang Sun had thrown away in his forge. Fuck. Chapter 28. Star, The Golden Key, 3, you are listening at novelfull.audio. After Chang Sun left, Choi Bu Yong collapsed into his chair again. Plop. It was as if a storm had swept the forge. Bu Yong could not pull himself together for a long time even after Chang Sun left. He muttered in confusion, "What the hell is with that guy?" Still, he was sure about one thing. The connection that had just been formed brought a new change to his life, which was previously filled with depression, uncertainty, frustration, and despair. He was unsure whether the change was a chance to start a new life or a happy episode that did not mean much, but he was sure that a new phase of his life had begun. Woof. Pant, pant, pant. As if he had read his owner's thoughts, Wilson let out a light and pleasant bark. With a faint smile, Bu Yong stroked the dog's head and said, "Yeah, I'm not sure what happened, but now that things have turned out this way, let's do this right." The blueprints for Chang Sun's requested weapons were already being drawn inside Bu Yong's mind. When he held the hammer in his hand, it felt like new. The new Oyezi was about to be born. Asterisk 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 The Highoff clan's attack department head, Go Sung, 1, felt as if he had gotten into a real pickle. He asked, "Have you found the guy who closed the dungeon?" "They haven't found," his subordinate timidly reported. "Why can't you do your jobs properly?" Sung, 1 yelled at the top of his lungs. For the first time after a long time, he had gotten off work early, hoping to spend quality time with his family at home. However, he had suddenly received an emergency call telling him to return to the clan headquarters, and the news that met him there was like a bolt from the blue. The clan had tried to close Bestla's tomb over the past 5 years, but failed. However, it had suddenly undergone closure. On top of that, all the people who were in the dungeon at the time had gone missing, including Li J. Song. In other words, Peter's key, which the clan had tried so hard to obtain, had been stolen. Find him by any means necessary. By any means. Kill the guy or make a new key. Get Peter's key, one way or another. Sung, 1 screamed. While Sung, 1 yelled, his subordinates had to hide their necks like turtles and tiptoe around him. They felt as if he would cut off their heads if they said the man in a haho mask who seemed to be the primary suspect had escaped the Bongwasan mountain region. However, Sung.1's anger was understandable. He would be fired even before his subordinates if he did nothing. He pulled his hair in frustration, thinking, "They'll never let this go. Shit, shit." If only the Highoff clan had been involved with the incident, he could have just taken full responsibility by resigning. Despite everything, Sung, 1 was a founding member of the Highoff clan, so many executives of the clan adored him. The problem was that even though the Highoff clan legally owned the Bongwasan Gate, it had a real owner. The gate was truly owned by the White Tiger clan, one of the greatest clans in Korea. Those who were ignorant would say all of the 10 clans were the same, but most people knew of the true power gap between the Highoff clan and the White Tiger clan. Even if there were dozens of forces on par with the Highoff clan, they would never be able to win against the White Tiger clan. That clan was considered among the best not only in Korea, but also in the whole world. Their council of elders was like a congregation of great devils that the council could not easily interfere with. That was why the Hyoff clan had been working as the White Tiger clan's hound for a long time. Due to the White Tiger clan's protection, the Hyoff clan had been able to evade the law despite all the crimes they committed. That was the role they had taken in managing Bestla's tomb. In order to obtain Peter's key, they had needed to offer human sacrifices, which meant the White Tiger clan needed to hide their connection to the dungeon. That was why it had been placed under the Hyoff clan's management. In truth, Department Head Sung Won did not know what Peter's key was for. He did not even know whether the key was really related to St. Peter the way most people would assume, or somehow related to Bestla the ancient giant, who was presumed to be the tomb's owner. That was because the White Tiger clan had not shared any information with him. On top of that, Jae Song, who had been managing the dungeon the entire time, never learned that the White Tiger clan had contracted the Hyoff clan. That was how confidential the connection between the White Tiger clan and the Hyoff clan was. And yet, that same Bestla's tomb had just been closed. Sung Won was certain that if the White Tiger clan found out about it, they would not only kill Sung Won, but also any executives who were close to him, which meant the Hyoff clan would be completely finished in the end. If that bastard Seo Jong Gwon finds out about this, he'll also kill my family. I can't let that happen, so I have to find him somehow. Sung Won thought nervously. However, he soon came to the conclusion that nothing would be resolved if he just sat around and waited for his subordinates' reports. There was one silver lining, however, the rest of the night was long. The White Tiger clan would only hear about it the next morning when everybody went to work, which meant Sung Won had to sort things out before then. Fine, I'll go to Bongwasan Mountain right now. Get my car ready. Come on. Sung Won yelled. Unfortunately, Sung Won did not realize that the White Tiger clan was not as sloppy as he expected. The White Tiger clan had never believed in their hound, as a hound could always run away or bite its owner's neck if things went wrong. Thus, they had kept a tight leash in reserve without the hound's knowledge. The incident in Bestla's tomb had already been reported to them by the spies they planted in the Hyoff clan in advance. Jong Gwon frowned when he heard the report from a subordinate. He was the person in charge of a secret plan that was only known to very few people in the White Tiger clan, named Project Peter. What? Jong Gwon exclaimed angrily. Zing. Living up to his title as the leader of Attack Team 2, the White Tiger clan's pride and joy, the air around Jong Gwon froze almost instantly whenever he got angry. The subordinate who had quietly whispered his report to Jong Gwon turned pale. Just then. Rip. The sound of tearing paper filled the room, making Jong Gwon's killing intent dissipate as if it had never been there in the first place. That was when Jong Gwon finally came to his senses, looking in the direction where the sound had come from. Woo Yang Gun of the Sword of Osung clan shot Jong Gwon a harsh glare. Standing behind him was So Yu.Ha, Chong Sun's mother. Her face was pale. Jong Gwon saw Cha Yi Gun soothing Yu.Ha, telling her that everything was alright. What is the matter with you, team leader Seo? How could you use Tiger Kill when there is a civilian present? Yang Gun snapped angrily. It was understandable, because a player, a high-ranker's energy could be lethal to civilians. Clicking his tongue, Jong Gwon realized that he had become too sensitive due to the incident at Bestla's tomb, causing him to make an absurd mistake. However, he was too proud to deliver an apology, and he quietly stood up from his seat. Yang Gun's gaze turned sharp, as if he were silently asking what Jong Gwon was thinking. Although Jong Gwon strongly wanted to punch Yang Gun in the face, not liking his shamelessness, he did nothing in the end. Yang Gun was also a talented player, which meant Jong Gwon would risk losing an arm by going up against him. Instead of apologizing, Zhang Guan turned to his subordinates who were on standby and shouted in irritation, "It's too late, and it seems this Li Chang, Sun guy won't return today. Let's go back." In truth, his intent was to find out what had happened in Bestla's tomb. However, they made up an excuse, as they just happened to have a valid reason to leave Chang Sun's home. They had been waiting for Chang Sun there for over 5 hours, which meant they had followed their superior's orders well enough. Yang Gun wanted to strike the back of Zhang Guan's head, but he could not start a fight in Chang Sun's home. Thus, he took his hand off the hilt of his sword and turned to Chang Sun's mother, asking, "Are you all right?" Although Yu.Ha looked quite surprised, she maintained her composure. She stood up straight and replied with a solemn look, "Yes, I am fine. I have heard that the awakened lived in a different world, but only now do I realize how true that is. My youngest son is a lot like him, right?" While Zhang Guan, Yang Gun, and Yi Dun waited for Chang Sun, Yu.Ha had heard what had happened to her youngest son over the past few days. She had been heartbroken to find out that Chang Sun had entered the world of players, which she knew to be hellish. However, she had soon asked in detail whether Chang Sun could adapt to the world of players after regaining her composure. There was a saying that every mother in the world was great. Yi Dun had understood that on some level due to the fact that her parents doted on her, but even she was surprised to see just how much that applied to Chang Sun's mother. Although he may look cold on the exterior, he is a tender-hearted boy. I really hope he will not get hurt anymore, but that would be difficult, Yu.Ha said with a light sigh. Yang Gun and Yi Dun could tell that Yu.Ha was subtly rejecting their offers, implying that she could not encourage her youngest son to go to dangerous places as his mother. In the end, the two and Jin Suk Tae had to leave Chang Sun's home in a hurry, as if they had been kicked out. Team leader Seo made things more complicated, Yang Gun said tiredly as he massaged the bridge of his nose in the elevator. He had personally gone to Chang Sun's home because his lovely niece had insisted on recruiting Chang Sun using any means necessary. However, he felt as if he had gotten on the wrong side of Chang Sun by inadvertently visiting at the same time as Zhang Guan. I cannot just go back without even meeting him. What is your plan, Agents Cha and Jin? Yang Gun asked politely. Despite the pleasantries, it would be hard to say that the clans and the council were on good terms. However, the Sword of Osung clan had a decent relationship with the council. The Osung group, their clan's parent company, made it their main contribution to society to be the largest charitable donor for the Korean branch of the council. Apart from that, Yang Gun also lived up to his reputation as the finest gentleman in the family of the Osung Group's president, and had been very kind to Yi Dun and Suk Tae. If you are planning to stay, I can ask my secretary to bring coffee for the two of you, too, Yang Gun offered gently. Then I would like a hot cup of caramel macchiato. Arg. Suk Tae began to reply brightly, but he had to stop speaking when Yi Dun elbowed him in the waist. He was level 41, but Yi Dun was level 62 and a high ranker. That meant even an elbowing from Yi Dun could potentially break some of Suk Tae's ribs. Even though Suk Tae had been hit by such a deadly weapon, Yi Dun did not even give her junior partner a glance before calmly shaking her head. She said, "No, it's okay. We have another schedule, so we'll have to meet Mr. Li Chang Sun another time. I appreciate your gesture, though." "Ha. Senior partner, we're going to get off work after." "Gah." Suk Tae yelped. He had to stop babbling because Yi Dun had stomped powerfully on his foot. Yang Gun merely nodded quietly with a faint smile. However, his expression was like an impenetrable mask, leaving Yi Dun unable to tell what was going on in his mind. He bowed and said, "I see you are too busy, so I will see you next time." "Yes, take care." "Suk Tae, follow me," Yi Dun said, glaring at Suk Tae. Ding. As soon as the elevator arrived on the first floor and its doors opened, Yi Dun dragged Suk Tae by the nape and left the lobby. Suk Tae wanted to ask why Yi Un was doing that, but he said nothing when he saw Yi Un's stiff expression, realizing that something must have happened. Xianing. Just as Suk Tae thought that, he realized that his phone had been ringing fiercely in his back pocket, and he had not noticed it until then. When he checked the message on it, his expression also froze. Human sacrifice and sacrificial offering were the two phrases that the council hated more than anything in the world. The message continuously repeated those very same phrases. When the two agents saw it, they realized Li Chang-sun was no longer their priority. While he headed back home in a taxi, Chang-sun stroked the fire poker, no, the old bronze sword. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, grumbles, asking why he brought the old sword. It had to have been handled roughly for a long time, as there were many blackened spots and scratches along the blade. There's no way any sword that could be used as the divine fire furnace's fire poker would be ordinary. From the moment he first picked up the sword, Chang-sun had already realized its true power. It was comparable to Tiamat's snaggletooth, no, it could even be more powerful. The sacred weapon in his hand was the legendary Yuchang sword. Chapter 29. Star, the Golden Key. 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Yuchang sword, one of the 9 fine swords that were forged by the first Oyezi, the divine blacksmith. It can be used as a dagger due to its short length. Its first owner was known to be an assassin. Type: dagger. Sacred artifact. Damage: unmeasurable. Effect: unknown. Asterisk requirements have not been met. Unable to use the artifact's ability. Asterisk requirements have not been met. Unable to inspect the details of the sacred artifact. Tiamat's snaggletooth, and Yuchang sword, These 2 weapons alone are already better than most weapons used by players. Chang-sun thought as he observed the sword with great interest. It would be rare to find a celestial who had weapons forged by both Taotai the devil blacksmith and Oyezi the divine blacksmith. Anyone who decided to sell one of the 9 fine swords, the swords that represented Oyezi, could name any price they wanted. In fact, many celestials had waged a bloody war against each other using their apostles as proxies when the Zhanlu sword, another of the 9 fine swords, had been found in Arcadia. By the end of that war, didn't 2 empires and 6 kingdoms end up falling? Chang-sun thought as he spun the sword. As he had only been an ordinary wandering mercenary, he had been unable to participate in that war, but he knew what kind of aftermath it had left. That one war had been more lethal than a plague. Despite that, it had ended abruptly because the Zhanlu sword was lost in the midst of the war, making it even worse. The incident had allowed Chang-sun to estimate just how valuable the 9 fine swords were. I would never have thought of such a fine sword being used as a fire poker. Chang-sun thought, shaking his head. However, another thought soon occurred to him. Maybe they used the sword this way on purpose. Among the 9 fine swords, the Yuchang sword was the one that had been used most often to spill blood. The sword symbolized assassins who had killed numerous kings and heroes. It contained very powerful grudges, which meant it was called a cursed demon sword. Its appearance had not been known, unlike the other fine swords. However, it seemed almost as if the first Oyezi, the creator of the sword, had secretly spread the story on purpose. To think some people say that the first Oyezi was called the divine blacksmith because he didn't like bloodshed. Chang-sun thought with a grin. Although he was unsure whether it was the first Oyezi or one of his heirs, the Oyezi who had successfully retrieved the Yuchang sword, had to have erased all the patterns on the blade that could be used to identify it, then used it to tend the divine fire brazier. That Oyezi had no doubt chosen the second best option due to being unable to destroy it. As time passed, the fact that their fire poker was in fact the Yuchang sword, had been forgotten even among the Oyezis. However, the sword's destiny had changed when it caught Chang-sun's eye. Chang Sun had once become so proficient in handling various kinds of weapons that he had even acquired a special trait, King of Weapons. During his divine Twilight years, his only hobby had been collecting new weapons, so he naturally recognized the value of the Yuchang sword. No matter how dull its edge had become, a fine sword would always remain a fine sword. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, grumbles about you grinning over strange things. The childish Pabelsag, who only liked to hunt, continued to complain as she had no eye for weapons. The Celestial, Twilight, piercing owl, watches you in satisfaction. Minerva appeared to have noticed something, but Chang Sun was certain that she did not know the sword was the Yuchang sword, no matter how great a warring deity she was. If I can, it would be fun to collect all the 9 fine swords of O Yezi, he thought. Although he was half joking, he still felt as if it would be possible. His intuition told him that the connection he had formed with O Yezi's heir was strong. Squeak. The taxi just happened to arrive in front of Chang Sun's apartment at that moment. He paid with his card, then got out of the vehicle. The sun was already setting, but Chang Sun could not go home yet. Expressionless, he turned to look at the garden. There was no one there, only big trees and beautiful flowers. However, Chang Sun stared at it with a sharp gaze, as if there were someone waiting there. Do you want something from me? Chang Sun called out clearly. The trees just danced along the wind, and no one answered. Equipped the Flame Tiger's Fong Chisel. Initiating attack. Chang Sun suddenly threw the icepick like weapon he had made out of a boss monster's fong toward the garden. At first, there seemed to be no sign that somebody was present, but the air suddenly distorted as if a ghost had appeared. Clash. I was hiding, but how can you just attack first and ask questions second? Wu Yang Gun, who had been using the skill concealment to figure out Chang Sun's ability, began to exclaim, but he had to stop when he saw Chang Sun running toward him with a big black dagger in his hand. Little did Yang Gun know that Chang Sun was using viper eyes. Swoosh. As the situation forced his hand, Yang Gun had to draw his black pearl scimitar. It was his favorite weapon, and had enabled him to become one of the best swordsmen alive in Korea, Black Shamshir. Clang. The heavy and rhythmic sound of swords clashing against each other echoed through the apartment complex. Pa. Seemingly having no intention of stopping, Chang Sun continued to unleash quick sword strikes against Yang Gun. Clang. Clash. Clang. Chang Sun and Yang Gun exchanged several attacks in an instant. Whenever their swords clashed with each other, Yang Gun felt Chang Sun's sheer power through his fiercely shaking blade, and his eyes widened in shock. How can a rookie's power? Yang Gun thought, clenching his teeth. His level was overwhelmingly higher than Chang Sun's, but Yang Gun was unsure whether he could overwhelm the man himself. That was how powerful Chang Sun's sword attacks were, and they could even shake the black pearl scimitar. On top of that, his strikes were quick and decisive. Yang Gun could not find any specific pattern in Chang Sun's attacks, which meant his swordsmanship was not deep and systematic. It was a fighting style born of actual combat, used by mercenaries who earned their living by fighting. However, Yang Gun was certain that even a full cohort of mercenaries would be unable to win against Chang Sun. No, it would be an insult to Chang Sun to even imply that. Although Chang Sun's swordsmanship was certainly common and unsophisticated, Yang Gun did not see any unnecessary moves in his attacks. He finally realized that Chang Sun's sword strikes had only one purpose, to kill his enemy. He felt that only a person who had maximized the efficiency of his skills by honing them in countless battles would fight that way. Thus, Yang Gun had difficulty thinking of Chang Sun as a rookie. Normally, only first-generation players who had gone through countless hardships displayed such movements. As he had not used his sword for a long time, he was unsure whether he could subdue a fighter on Chang Sun's level without leaving a scar on him. I provoked him to test his ability, but it seems I'll only make a fool of myself if I continue. I guess I have to get a little serious, Yang Gun thought, feeling his heart pound for the first time in a very long time. Even though he knew that as a respected figure in society, it was inappropriate to behave that way against a rookie, he could not hold back any longer. I'm going to be severely scolded by my niece, Yang Gun thought as he repeatedly apologized in his mind to his adorable niece, who had pestered him to recruit Chang Sun by any means necessary. Shying. Yang Gun flipped his black pearl scimitar over, revealing his hidden weapon. He had decided to give the battle his all. The scimitar calls forth 10,000 curved blades. Xianing. Yang Gun's sword trembled fiercely as a powerful aura that could split the very air formed on its blade. He thought to himself, I should be able to have a good fight with this rookie if I use this. However. Clang. After a single clash between Yang Gun and Chang Sun's blades, Yang Gun instantly changed his mind, as a shiver ran down his spine and brought him back to his senses. Why have I been acting like such an idiot, he thought, biting the inside of his cheek. He was here to recruit a rookie, not fight recklessly as he had once done in his youth. On top of that, he was in an apartment complex where many people lived, and a fight between players could cause a lot of damage to it. Hearing the sharp sounds of clashing metal, several people from various units had already opened the windows and begun watching the two fight. Yang Gun could see that some had even tried to call the police. Yang Gun stepped back, making distance from Chang Sunday. Just as the sharp-eyed Chang Sun was about to leap forward, he stuck the black pearl scimitar in the asphalt below and held his hands up in surrender. Chang Sun could no longer attack, and thus lowered his sword. No, Yang Gun could not be sure whether to call it a dagger or a long sword. However, he remained tense, his gaze sharp. Yang Gun could tell that he could resume attacking at any moment if he needed to. Is he really a rookie? Damn, he seems more ferocious than most fighting dogs, Yang Gun thought, slightly shaking his head. However, he had heard that Chang Sun had gone through the tutorial, which made Yang Gun think that it was quite believable for Chang Sun to react that way. After all, the tutorial given by capricious celestials was like a natural disaster to most humans. Still, that was insufficient to answer his question as to where Chang Sun had developed the sword skills of a true combatant. I apologize for unintentionally provoking you. I was just trying to test your ability, but I suppose I got too excited and caused a big misunderstanding, Yang Gun said. He apologized politely and even bowed, despite the fact that Chang Sun was much younger than him. Knowing that Yang Gun was sincere, Chang Sun loosened up, throwing Tiamat Snaggletooth back into his inventory. Who are you? He asked, his tone full of hostility. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, yells about how you should teach the man who dared to attack you a lesson. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, is looking forward to your fight. Chang Sun's rude tone got on Yang Gun's nerves, but he could not reveal his annoyance, as he had started the fight first. Yang Gun quickly pulled out a card holder from the inner pocket of his suit, then handed Chang Sun his business card. After he read Yang Gun's business card, Chang Sun's eyes shone with interest. He did not personally know Yang Gun, the Sword of Osung clan's personnel director. However, he had heard about the clan, which was the main rival of his target, the White Tiger clan. The deity they serve is the Nameless Giant, right? Chang Sun thought as he flipped over Yang Gun's business card. The deity's real name was Yupwang, a wealth deity who was known to protect people's assets. However, the deity the clan served was not particularly related to the Zodiacs, whom Chang Sun was trying to capture, which neat Chang Sun had not been paying much attention to them. Why would they come to him? I actually visited you today to recruit you to our clan, Mr. Li Chang Sun, Yang Gun said as he studied Chang Sun's face. Once again, Chang Sun's eyes shone with interest. I'm not too happy about being abruptly provoked. By the way, though, how did you find out about me? Chang Sun replied, speaking more calmly because he felt that he no longer had to maintain his aggression. After all, he could not sense any hostility from Yang Gun, who seemed to be from a solid background. Of course, he did not let his guard down. Yang Gun smiled enigmatically and replied, "It seems you do not know how famous you are. Well, I suppose it has not been long since the Jamsil Gate closed. Apart from our clan, I think many clans around the globe must be interested in you, Mr. Lee Chang. Sunday." Chang. Sun's eyes sparkled. He had been on guard because he thought his involvement with the incident at the Bongwasan Gate might have been discovered. It seemed he had been mistaken, however. He had known he would become famous after finishing the tutorial in the Jamsil Gate, but the clans had reacted much faster than he expected. He had not expected their intelligence capabilities to be so good. I guess he isn't going to look down on me just because I'm a player, he thought as he looked back at Yang Gun. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, angrily asks whether you are really going to let an enemy who provoked you go. Although I would really like to talk with you about many things. I made a big mistake today, so I will contact you again after you have calmed down enough. Of course, you are more than welcome to call me first using the number on my business card, Yang Gun said with a bow, bidding Chang Sun farewell. Even though he sounded polite, it was clear that Yang Gun strongly believed that Chang Sun would end up calling his number, showing how proud he was of his clan. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, is hopping mad, yelling that a person who is to become her apostle should never lose. The Celestial World Encircling Serpent criticizes her, telling her to do it herself if she wants the fight to continue. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, loses her temper, yelling at World Encircling Serpent that she might fight against him instead. BL.net, the Celestial World Encircling Serpent smirks at a good season to hunt, urging her to come at him. The Celestial, a good season to hunt, runs amok, yelling that she will kill him and use his body to make a snake stew. Ignoring Pablesag and J. Rumungander's silly bickering, Chang Sun idly played with Yang Gun's business card after the man himself left. He had no plans to join the Sword of Osung clan, but there seemed to be no harm in knowing there was another option. Yang Gun had provoked him, but he looked like a decent man. Anyway, he's somewhat familiar. Chang Sun thought, tilting his head in confusion because something was bothering him. Yang Gun did not look like a stranger to Chang Sun, although he had no idea where he had met the man. After momentarily wondering if he had met Yang Gun before he went to Arcadia, he suddenly came back to reality as he realized something. Wait, if such a person came here. Did he also enter my home? Shit, Chang Sun thought. He moved quickly, as he had not been planning on telling his family about the fact that he had become a player yet. They'll just worry about me a lot. Chang Sun thought, clenching his teeth. Did you enjoy your jog, dear? Chang Sun's mother, Soyu.ha, called out from the kitchen when Chang Sun entered his home, as if she knew who had arrived just by his footsteps. Mom, just now. Chang Sun quickly began. You have not eaten yet, have you? Wash your hands first and come sit here, Yu.ha gently said. Chang Sun carefully walked toward the kitchen, thinking of how to explain the whole story. However, he belatedly realized that his mother was much tougher than he had thought when he saw her cooking as usual. She did not look as if she had been shaken up one bit, meaning she trusted her youngest son more than anyone in the world. Do you want to talk to me about something? Yu.ha asked, looking in Chang Sun's direction when she senses Chang Sun watching her. Mom, Chang Sun began, looking at the floor. Yes, honey. Yu.ha said as she scooped rice into a bowl. I have something to tell you, Chang Sun said, only then his mother's eyes. That was when Chang Sun made up his mind to tell his mother a little about himself, in order to ensure she would not worry too much about him. Still, he could not tell her all the details just yet. However, he would tell her everything someday. A month soon passed, and afterward the White Tiger clan began to recruit new players. It was finally time for Chang Sun to make his move. 1. Yupwang is a god who actually exists in Korean mythology, also known as Yupwangsan, or Uipsan. Chapter 30. Star, the test. 1. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. It happened long ago. Whoa. You're young, but you already have the face of a killer, an old man exclaimed. What's up with you, geezer? Get lost if you don't want to get killed, Chang Sun snapped, scowling at the old man. When he was involuntarily taken to Arcadia through a gate, Chang Sun had not known anything, not even their language. The only thing he could do was to pick up a spear from a pool of blood and swing it. 2 years of fighting through that hell had made him hostile and belligerent by default. Respecting one's elders was a luxury on a battlefield, a place where anyone could die the next day. A battlefield was a place where people had to scream at the top of their lungs to be heard, and had to kill others by any means necessary in order to survive. Thus, Chang Sun was displeased about being stopped abruptly in the midst of such a hell by an old man making such an evaluation about him. Ha ha ha. The old man laughed gently. In truth, despite his gentle appearance, the old man had met all kinds of trash after spending 50 years on various battlefields. He excelled in no less than forcing such trash to become brand-new people. I see you also have no manners, child, he remarked, shaking his head. You're still talking. If you're just going to keep saying useless crap, get out of my way. Chang Sun snapped, shoving the man. I have no other choice, because you look as if you need a good beating. Let's talk after I'm done beating you, the old man said, smiling quietly. Smack. ****** chirp. Chirp, chirp. Why did I have that dream? Chang Sun thought, massaging his temples after waking up. Warm morning sunlight shone through the gap between his curtains, but he did not even notice it because he was preoccupied with his dream. That nostalgic memory was from Chang Sun's early days in Arcadia, which he could barely remember. The old man, whom Chang Sun had called Gramps or Grandpa until the end, had always been Chang Sun's pillar of strength in Arcadia, where Chang Sun was a mere stranger. Gramps had been Chang Sun's first proper martial arts teacher, a father figure who had prevented him from going down the wrong path in life, a colleague who had his back, and a friend whom he could laugh with. He had a really nasty personality, Chang Sun thought, chuckling quietly. And Gramps was one of the reasons Chang Sun had become Divine Twilight. As Gramps had lay dying unjustly, he had passed his guardian on to Chang Sunday. In that time, the complicated had broken out, a conflict that involved numerous apostles, deities, and stars. The events that had happened at the time were why Chang Sun was even here today, and why he was about to do the things he planned to do. Perhaps everything that happened so far had stimulated Chang Sun's subconsciousness and made him dream about Gramps. Even after his regression, he was still having a hard time adjusting to the fact that there were parts about himself that he could not control, such as his subconsciousness and his dreams. The fact that he could not do so vaguely unsettled him. However, the dream was a little different. It only made him miss Gramps a great deal, giving him all the more reason to pull himself together. Zing. Chang Sun's smartphone vibrated as it showed him his schedule for the day. It was finally time to start his hunt. *****, where are you going? So you ha asked with a smile. It had been a month since Chang Sun's regression. In all that time, he had woken up at regular times and never drank. Although he was still on awkward terms with his other family members, Ha looked at her youngest son very warmly. Perhaps it was partly because Chang Sun had even started exercising regularly. I'm going to the interview I told you about before, Chang Sun said as he put on his sneakers. Ah, right. Today was the day. But are you going to the interview dressed like that? Yu.Ha asked, looking at Chang Sun in confusion after heading over to see him out. Chang Sun had said that he was going to an interview, but he was wearing a black hoodie and jeans as he carried a heavy gym bag on one shoulder. Maybe he's planning to become an ordinary security guard, Liu Xian, Chang.Sun's sister who was eating breakfast, remarked with a smirk after glancing at Chang.Sunday. You, Xian, how can you talk to your brother like that? Yu.Ha exclaimed, gaping. No one who's doing a job interview for an office job dresses like that, Yu Xian replied with a shrug. Still. Yu.Ha tried to protest. I'll be heading out, Chang Sun said as he left quickly, sensing a long mother-and-daughter talk in the near future. However, Yu.Ha quickly followed him out, rushing to catch him before he entered the elevator. She slipped some money into Chang.Sun's hands. You don't have to give me allowance, Chang Sun trailed off. I'm just giving this to you because I'm proud of my youngest son. Eat something delicious and hang out with your friends after you're done with your job interview, okay? Yu.Ha replied, tightly gripping Chang.Sun's hands. I will, Chang Sun said with a nod. Alright, have a fun day today. I love you, Yu.Ha said, waving lightly to Chang.Sunday. After bowing to his mother, Chang Sun pressed the first floor button and replied, yes, I will. When the elevator door closed, he leaned against one of its walls. As he looked down at 250,000 won bills, he thought, love, Yu.Ha constantly cheered on her youngest son who had become a totally different person, saying she loved him and that she was forever on Chang.Sun's side. That was why Chang Sun thought his regression was the best choice he had made over the past centuries, even though his siblings and father seemed to think that a leopard could never change his spots. He could not help but think there was a reason that he had seen Gramps in his dream. So, Chang Sun thought, his eyes shining coldly for a moment. I should do well. Ding. The elevator door opened. Whoa, whoa. An apartment resident who happened to have been waiting for the elevator on the first floor turned pale when he met Chang.Sun's gaze, but Chang Sun nonchalantly passed by him. What's up with you? Wake up, Chan's dad, a woman urgently called out to the other resident from behind Chang.Sunday. After coming to his senses, the resident looked back. However, Chang Sun had already gotten into the taxi he had called, saying, please take me to Xiangsu station. Chang Sun did not head directly to Gangnam, where the White Tiger clan's headquarters were. Instead, he planned to visit Choi Bu Yong first, because he had finally received a message that Bu Yong had finally finished making the items he had been eagerly waiting for. The taxi headed toward the Yangdong Bridge on the Olympic Boulevard Expressway. As he watched the Hangang River through the window, Chang Sun used his smartphone to check for important news on web portals the way he did every morning. He had never skipped a day of checking the news after he had regressed. It had gradually become a habit, because he could gain a lot of useful information by combining small pieces of information from the news. Such as, after Chang Sun finished Bestla's tomb, the press had been left in an uproar, much more fiercely than Chang Sun had expected. The victims, whom Chang Sun had brought out in advance, had managed to arrive at a nearby police station and ask for help without getting caught by the Hyoff clan's players. As the press had already been abuzz with activity due to the recent Jamsil Gate incident, the addition of the Bongwasan incident only added fuel to the fire. Before daybreak, the council had already issued an emergency order and attacked the Hyoff clan's head office. According to the news article, a large and intense battle had broken out, making the office collapse. The people who lived nearby had needed to temporarily evacuate. However, there was another piece of news that caught Chang.Sun's eye. He scrolled down, thinking, the real problem is this part. At first glance, the White Tiger clan seemed to be actively cooperating with the council along with the other clans because they were angry with the Hyoff clan, who had caused a social scandal. However, the whole situation sounded suspicious to Chang.Sunday. They're acting too quickly, as if they had been waiting for this moment. Chang Sun thought as he leaned against the window. The White Tiger clan had struck the Hyoff clan very quickly and harshly. As soon as the council struck the Hyoff clan, the White Tiger clan had immediately sent its attack teams, practically starting a full-scale war against the Hyoff clan. The White Tiger clan's attack teams were already among the best in the world, but the clan had also sent Smilodon, attack team 2 leader Seo Jong Guan. An eyewitness had reported that the Hyoff clan leader's head had been smashed in. Unlike the other clans who had half-heartedly helped the council, trying to minimize the damage they would sustain, the White Tiger clan did not appear to care about their potential losses. That meant the press and the public had begun speaking highly of them. It's nonsense, Chang Sun thought, snorting as he read the news article. Chang Sun knew more about Hyoju, the Calamity Tiger, than anyone else in the world. Despite his cruel and vicious personality, Hyoju was a quick-witted opportunist who tried to avoid ever suffering a loss. Considering how each clan took after its guardian's personality, there was a high chance that the White Tiger clan's righteous side was a facade. In that case, why would the clan react so dramatically? It only makes sense if the White Tiger clan was secretly working with the Hyoff clan the entire time. They have to bury the skeletons in their closet somehow. Chang Sun thought, tilting his head. However, Chang Sun felt more as if the White Tiger clan had been punishing the Hyoff clan, not merely burying the truth. Is this also related to them? He thought, pulling out the necklace he was wearing. On the end of the chain was the golden key he had taken out of Bestla's tomb. He had been trying to solve the mystery of the key for a month, but to no avail. Regardless, he was curious as to how the White Tiger clan's executives would react if he showed the key to them. While he was lost in thought, the taxi had already reached the end of the Yangdong Bridge. Chang Sun scrolled down and checked other news articles. ****, you're really here, Bu Yong said with a sigh. You look tired, Chang Sun said as he looked at Bu Yong's face, which looked far more tanned, no, tired, than before. When Chang Sun spoke, Bu Yong frowned deeply, as if he would scowl and shoot him a glare if only he had eyes. Woof! Woof! Seemingly reading his owner's thoughts, Wilson, the seeing that eye dog, barked at Chang Sun from beside Bu Yong. Unlike Bu Yong, Wilson had gained weight. Who do you think made me like this? Bu Yong hissed through gritted teeth. In truth, every one of Chang Sun's requests and deadlines was ridiculous. Each and every request had unique characteristics, and it was difficult to get the necessary materials on the market. If not for the suppliers Bu Yong's parents had told him about, he could not have even begun to make the weapons. Ha! Why am I wasting my breath? Bu Yong muttered, shaking his head. Where are they? Chang Sun asked. Here, Bu Yong replied, putting down the container he had been carrying on his back ever since Chang Sun arrived. Thud. The container looked like an ordinary drawing tube, but it somehow let out a heavy metallic sound when Bu Yong put it down. His blindness should have made it difficult for him to set the object down, but he handled it well, which indicated he was also a player who knew how to use magic. Chang Sun smiled faintly upon hearing the clear metallic tone that resembled a temple bell echoing throughout the forge. That sound meant the items within were sacred weapons. A very good weapon sounded different from an ordinary weapon. What about the properties I asked for? Chang Sun asked as he grabbed the container. You have eyes, don't you? Bu Yong retorted in annoyance, even though he knew Chang Sun had only asked because he wanted an assessment from the item's creator. However, his tone was full of confidence. Chang Sun opened the drawing tube up. It had 3 things inside. 2 batons the size of human arms, and 1 twisted brown bracelet. This is. Chang Sun quickly pulled out the 2 batons and lightly felt them. From the balance to the material's elasticity, everything was perfect. The celestial, a good season to hunt, widens her eyes. The celestial world encircling serpent lightly exclaims in awe of the weapon's quality. Chang Sun felt as if he were holding the old weapon he had used long ago. The batons were definitely new, but they felt incredibly comfortable in his hands, as if he had used them for a long time. After toying with the two batons for a while, Chang Sun combined them using the joints on their ends and turned the weapon sideways. Click. When the two joints connected to each other, blades emerged from either end of the newly formed pole. Nameless double baton spear, a long spear forged by O Yezi's heir for a commission. The spear is usually used in the form of two batons or short spears, but they can be combined in times of need and used as a long spear. Apart from that function, other devices are installed in the spear, which means it will likely take the owner a long time to master it. Type. Long spear. Infantry weapon. Damage. 150-200 effect. Piercing blades. Stacking damage. Blessing amplification. Asterisk, this artifact will belong to you indefinitely. If you give the spear to somebody else, the weapon's effects may disappear. The creator has not named the spear, so please give it a suitable name. Walking around casually, Chang Sun thrust forward with the spear several times. Whenever he did so, the blades spun fiercely with explosive noises. Boom. 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 You have demonstrated outstanding spearmanship and achieved the exquisite principles of thrusting, cutting, striking, and binding. The skill, lesser spearmanship, has been created. The celestial, a good season to hunt, widens her eyes after seeing your brilliant spearmanship. It's really nice, Chang Sun said with a laugh after finishing his spearmanship demonstration. He felt that it was the loudest laugh he had ever let out since his regression. That was how much he liked the spear. No, he did not merely like it. If he had not had Tiamat's snaggletooth, or the Yuchang sword, he would have used the spear as his primary weapon without a second thought. From top to bottom, the spear looked exactly like the blueprint Chang Sun had handed to Bu Yong. That fact alone was already incredible. It was never easy to satisfy Chang Sun, who had previously earned a divine class. The celestial, a good season to hunt, is surprised that a blind man can make such a high-quality weapon. The celestial world encircling serpent is surprised that you have discovered such a talented craftsman. Are you a spearman? Bu Yong quickly asked. CEO, Chang Sun interrupted. Is CEO a spearman? Bu Yong quickly changed his question because he wanted an answer badly, although he was baffled by Chang Sun's stubbornness about strange things. Having spent a long time handling metals, Bu Yong had realized how talented Chang Sun was just by the sound. Chang Sun was not just an exceptional player, but also a talented martial artist. Bu Yong felt that Chang Sun was just as skilled as the 9 swordsmen or the 6 pugilists, but he had known Chang Sun to be a swordsman, not a spearman. The air around him changed the moment he grabbed the spear, though. Bu Yong thought. His confusion was understandable, because Chang Sun had begun to look like a totally different person. Chang Sun answered curtly, shrugging as if he had no intention to give Bu Yong a full explanation. The fact that Gramps had been his first proper spearmanship teacher was his secret and his alone. 1. About $100 in US terms. 2. The raw used. Koreans often call people by their children's name. In English, it would be something like, "Hello, Oliver's mom." 3. An area in Seoul. 4. Like Ascension, these refer to specific Korean martial arts terms. The first 3 are fairly self-explanatory, while binding or detainment refers to making an opponent unable to disengage from combat by locking down their weapon.